Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have a few bills and some constitutional amendments to get through, and I'd like to be able to do it as quickly as we can. Senator Saslaw's got the first bill on the docket, but he said he wasn't going to be here until closer to 9 o'clock. So we'll go to Senator Suderland with Senate Bill 1377. Is Senator Suderland available?
No, sir. We're checking now.
Well, he's got the next bill too, 1153.
Yeah. He's not, yeah. Senator Suderland is not outside.
Okay, is Senator DeSteff outside? He was just here. Senate Joint Resolution 322.
We're checking again. No.
Senator Chase, Senate Bill 1432.
No. All you have are committee members' bills. Senator Eben has 2 SJRs.
Okay, well then let's do committee member bills. The first two are Senator Eben. Senate Joint Resolution 270. Turn your attention to Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a substitute for SJR 270 that I can explain if the committee wants to adopt it. I would move that we adopt the substitute.
Okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute?
Aye.
Okay. Substitutes before you, is it on the LIS or?
It's been submitted. I don't know if it's loaded. Let's see.
Do we have it?
Mr. Chairman, it's been submitted. It should be loading in a few moments.
I can explain it in the interim, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just
Senator McDougal.
this is not specific to what the substitute is, because certainly it's not up yet, so we don't know. But in general, I don't feel comfortable voting on substitutes when they're not even released or handed out. I mean, so
I understand that. I understand that. I don't know that they can be released until they're adopted. But Brooks.
Mr. Chairman, I would say they could. They could release them online even if they're not adopted as a proposed amendment. I mean, when we had paper, we passed them out for us to look at it before we took a vote.
Mr. Chairman,
That's a good point. Senator Peake?
I went through this in another committee. So if you tell the people, if you tell staff to release it, they can release it online. But otherwise, they won't release it unless you tell them to.
Okay.
That's what they told me.
Well, Brooks, for the record, for anything else, I want the substitutes released as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Eben.
this has to do with the right to marry. Right now, in our bill of
Substitute's still not not up. Senator Eben, what?
perhaps I could describe it while it's loading. Okay, so this has to do with the what was called the marriage amendment, and in our Bill of Rights, we had forbid same-gender couples from marrying, which is no longer the operative law of the land, and the substitute language says the right to marry is a fundamental right inherent in the liberty of persons, and marriage is one of the vital personal interests essential to the orderly pursuit of happiness. This is in the Bill of Rights. And it goes on to say that the Commonwealth and its political subdivisions and agents shall issue marriage licenses, recognize marriages, and treat all marriages equally under the law, regardless of the sex or gender of the parties to the marriage.
Senator Eben, the bill is still not up on LIS. So you've gone from being just somewhat passive and striking the language from the Constitution and inserting new language.
That's correct. And further, the last sentence is that religious organizations and clergy acting in their religious capacity shall have the right to refuse to perform any marriage, to make it clear that we're not referring to holy matrimony conducted in a religious institution.
I don't know that we ought to vote on that until we can get it up online.
Okay.
So let's just go. Senator Suderland's here. You've got two bills, Senator Suderland. 1377 is the first one. If you want to present that bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1377 deals with the early, before session, large contributions.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Servell.
I believe this bill is, if not identical, intending to achieve the same thing that Senator Saslaw's bill does, and so I'm not sure if we should take that up until he's here, we decide how we're going to proceed on that. I know Senator Suderland has a different bill that has nothing to do with that, but I just want to point that out before we get into this too far.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So
Well, why don't we do that? Why don't we go to your next bill?
I think I could make it even quicker if I'd just been able to finish the sentence.
Okay, finish the sentence then.
Senator Saslaw has showed me his substitute, which incorporates both the aim of this bill and of his bill. So if you are all to adopt his substitute at that time, it'd be great. You can incorporate, one bill into the other, and the language of his substitute will achieve both goals.
And then would you want to be a chief co-patron of the bill?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Then we'll pass that bill by until we get to Senator Saslaw's bill. You've got 1153.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1153 is a very important bill that I wish had been in effect this last year, and it would have saved a lot of time for those of us in November, December, and January. I've talked with a lot of great folks who aren't the folks that get into conspiracy theories, but they watched on election night, they watched, elections near them, and they'd see, these were folks that regularly watched elections, and they knew which precincts usually go Democrat and Republican, and they'd see an election where one candidate would win precincts and the other party's stronghold precincts and figure, well, there's no way they can lose this. And in real time, I even told some of them, no, you need to watch. I have a feeling that you're getting a different composition on election day than you're getting in the absentee early vote. And I have a feeling you're not seeing, when it says 17 of 18 precincts reporting, you're not getting over 90% of the votes cast. You're probably somewhere around 40 cast. And this is going to shift in a big way. And then it did. And this was very perplexing to a lot of folks. And I think of all the, there's lots of things we can do to restore some folks' confidence in elections, but this more than anything else, we could do so folks can clearly see the election results reflect the reality of the votes being cast in their community and in other communities across the Commonwealth.
So this bill simply requires that the absentee ballots be sorted into precincts.
Yes.
And mechanically, have you figured out how to do that?
Other states have, and I believe we can too. Florida, which, as you may recall, they used to take a very long time to count votes, as some of us painfully remember. They've been able to successfully do it. They had earlier voting and larger absentee before we did. Last year was the year that we really had an expanded earlier vote electorate, and I believe we can do this. It's not all that different than in Fairfax County. They have three, previously you'd go look at the absentees from the 8th, the 10th, and 11th. In Roanoke County, we'd have the 6th and the 9th. And, but what it would do is you'd sort it by precinct. This is also, I believe it's important for folks' confidence in the election, but I think it's also very important for everyone that holds office at the county, legislature, any level, so we can see what's happening. Because that way, if something is happening in one part of the county and we're wondering why our vote's falling out, you go there and you try to find out what are you not being heard on. And I feel like when we move to this way where you only get the count, essentially we're only getting the county level numbers now, and then in a very small slice of the precinct, you are cutting out a very important information to the elected officials from the electorate.
Okay, I think we understand the bill. Are there questions for Senator Suderline?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Servell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in 2010, there was a state delegate from Mount Vernon that had the foresight to put this exact bill in because he saw growing absentee votes that were starting to happen even back then. And I don't know who it was. I don't know. Some problem child in the other body. But Mr. Chairman, I would say that I talked with the State Board of Elections, or the Department of Elections, I guess, after this last election cycle and asked them if whether or not there would be sort of implementational types of problems with this. And what they indicated to me is that most of the systems, if not all of them that are being used today, it's just a function of printing the ballots correctly so that when the machines scan them, the machines can identify the precinct which the voter came from based on the piece of paper, and that the computing equipment can just print out tapes that reflect the precinct totals, so that it's not like you have to go through all this logistical hassle of making separate piles of paper and counting them all differently. In a place like Fairfax, where you have 250 precincts, you don't have to have 250 piles or something at the central absentee place. They said this was all logistically doable with the technology that we have, and so I think it's a good idea. I think we ought to pursue it.
Are there questions for Senator Suderland? I think there's some in the public who want to be heard.
Katie Boyle, please go ahead and unmute.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm with Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties, and certainly have no position on the merits of the idea. I think in our conversations with registrars about the mechanics of this, I think this is probably something that is easier said than done. My understanding is it would require some additional upgrades of machines to do the print on demand ballots. I appreciate Senator Suderland, I know, put a budget amendment in to try to address some of those costs, but I believe that the cost would probably far exceed what's been contemplated in the budget amendment. So certainly this might be something that we could work towards, as a Commonwealth, if this is the direction of the legislature going forward, maybe with some state resources to assist with the costs. But I think given kind of the uncertainties about local budgets for the upcoming year, I think this might be something that we'd have to work towards over time. Thank you.
Let me ask you, Katie. I mean, the absentee ballots have to have a barcode as part of the authentication process, as I recall. Why in this 21st century technology world we live in, why couldn't the precinct be folded into that?
Mr. Chairman, if maybe some of the registrars are on and could speak to the mechanics of that, my understanding is that there would have to be some different ballot styles for every precinct, and I'm not sure that our current technology can accommodate that. But I'm hoping that registrars could maybe speak in a little bit more detail.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else?
Clara Wheeler, please go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Wheeler?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. I have spoken, I do not speak for, but I have spoken to many registrars, and I can't tell you exactly how many this year. And as a former, in my former world, I was the central absentee precinct chief in Albemarle County, and we did report by precincts. And this year, last year, in the November 20 election, there were registrars who had their ballots coded, a simple little number in the top of ballots by precincts. It's not quite the same thing as a ballot style in which you have different candidates on a ballot. The ballots are the same for the entire precinct or the entire district. And that number is coded into the software. And it's a very simple matter of reporting by precinct because the ballots all reflect the fact that they come from the same precinct. This gives the confidence to the voter, knowing that the people in their neighborhoods, in their precincts, are voting however they're voting. It's also good for candidates because they know what to expect maybe in the next election or where they need to put emphasis in the next election. But it can be done, and it was done in some localities in November 2020.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
James Hill, if you want to unmute and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, James Hill with Fairfax County. We ask that you oppose this bill because it will create a substantial increase in workload and logistical challenges for local registrars of larger jurisdictions. It would require the creation of unique ballot styles in order to associate absentee ballot vote totals to their originating precinct. For context, this past election cycle, there were roughly 75 ballot styles. At minimum, this bill would require 240 ballot styles for the county, which creates considerable challenges to ensure that each voter gets the correct ballot. Additionally, the county estimates that this bill would require an increase of up to $900,000 for additional printing costs.
Let me ask you, Mr. Howe, if Albemarle County can do it, why can't Fairfax County do it?
It's simply about the size of the county and the number of precincts and the number of split precincts that exist in Fairfax County. So there would be a need to be a unique ballot style for each precinct. So when these ballots are then being handed out to the correct absentee ballot voter, you would have to have, because you can't estimate how many voters are going to come from each precinct that are going to request absentee ballots, you have to overprint the number of ballots needed in order to ensure that no voter has to wait for their ballot to be accessible. Now, there is technology, as our colleague from VACO mentioned, that's called ballot on demand, but there are challenges with ballot on demand. And in previous election cycles, there have been issues in other localities where those ballots were printed, but because they were recently printed, the ink on those ballots ended up smearing on the machines. So there are concerns on the county about implementing ballot on demand.
Okay, thank you very much. Who's next?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask him a question?
Senator Bell.
Yeah, the last person testified from Fairfax, representing Fairfax County. When you say unique ballot, are you just talking about a barcode identifier, or is it involved more than that? Thank you.
So it's not necessarily a barcode. Clarabelle Wheeler did mention that there is kind of a unique identifier that associates this ballot is to this precinct. So ballot styles are in reference to the candidates that are on the precinct, but it's also in reference to just the type of ballot that the machine ends up reading. And so you would have to have a unique ballot to associate that voter in a precinct. So the best way to think about it is you have a bucket of ballots in the central absentee precinct. You don't necessarily know where that voter came from. So you have to have some way to differentiate where that voter comes from. And in our current process, we don't sort the absentee ballots as they come in. We don't sort them by precinct as they come in through the mail. So you're not exactly sure when you open that envelope how to associate which ballot to which precinct.
Okay, does that answer your question, Senator Bell? Who's the next speaker in the public? Senator Evans got a question.
Yeah, from Mr. Hio from Fairfax.
Yeah.
Further, we passed legislation requiring that the ballots start the processing and being fed into the machinery for reading prior to election day when they come in. Can you feed them all into the same scanner and have it keep track?
So that is correct. So the issues are not just with the counting portion of the ballots, it's actually getting the ballots out the door. So when absentee ballot applications come in, there's a limited period of time where you want to get the ballots directly back to the voter. So you have complications ensuring that the correct voter gets the correct ballot associated with the correct precinct. And then on the return of those ballots during pre-processing, you'd have to ensure that the correct ballot style is being entered into the machine. But the machine can separate the vote totals if you have all that coding in place.
Thank you.
Okay. Who's next in the public?
James Nix, please unmute and go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Senators. I'm representing the Virginia Electoral Board Association. I'm on the electoral board in Charlottesville. And VEBA opposes this bill because of the technical challenges it poses to the localities. The only way to do this, as you heard from the gentleman from Fairfax, is to have a separate ballot style for each precinct. In the case of Fairfax, as you already heard, that's 240 ballot styles, and then they print in 4 different languages in Fairfax. So that brings it to nearly 1,000. Now, this was actually done in Chesapeake in the most recent election. Chesapeake has 63 precincts, and on their own initiative, they actually printed 63 different ballot styles for that election, which really posed some challenges when it came to mailing out the ballots because they had to make sure they got the right ballot style in each envelope. And also,
Senator Spruill's got a question for you. When you're talking about Chesapeake, you're getting into his
Okay.
backyard.
We talked about it. It was no challenge for Chesapeake. It worked very well. So it was not a challenge for Chesapeake.
Well, the results were not reported by precinct in Chesapeake on election night because Veris cannot accept the results by precinct in CAP, in central absentee. There was a requester several days after the election who asked for a report by precinct, and that was presented because the HART system they have was able to print a report. But the fact remains, the only way to do this for ballots by mail is to have a unique ballot for each precinct that's sent out. Now, for the in-person early voting, there is an alternative, which has already been mentioned, and that's the ballot-on-demand printers. But those are expensive machines, and they would need state certification. I'm not even sure that there's a setup yet for certifying those in elect. But there really is no alternative to having the different ballot styles. I spoke at length with the manufacturer of our equipment, HART, which is the same one that makes the equipment for Chesapeake, and they said there really is no way around it. Their software will separate the votes if the votes are scanned on ballots unique to each precinct. And the only thing I'd like to add is that this really is of no benefit to the voters. This is really a benefit to the parties, and they very have valid needs for this data. But we're really not set up to do this in Virginia now. We need certainly Veris would have to be modified to accept the data on election night by precinct. So there are technical complications.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Are there others?
At this time, Mr. Chair, no.
Okay, Senator Suderland, you want to close up? Or Senator Spruill's got a question or something to say.
I was question.
Comment
Mr.
as
Chairman,
well, Mr. Chair.
I think this is a good bill, but you've seen with those who have spoken, you have a problem in the other Virginia. So let the rest of Virginia have it, and let the other Virginia do what they want to do. I'm not going to call them North Virginia because I get in trouble with my girlfriend Janet. Okay, so let the other Virginia do what they want to do, but the rest of us, let us do. I like it's a good bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
Yes, I would like to comment. And Mr. Chairman, I liked your bill that because if everybody knows what's going on, there's a huge discrepancy. Certain people are trying not to accept what happened in this past election. And they're, so many people voted in this precinct, but they only had this many registered voters. And that kind of crap that can be easily disproven. And if we pass this bill, and I like your bill, Mr. Chairman, because of what we saw, Donald Trump was up on election night, and then at 3 a.m. he was behind. Well, that was because they wouldn't count the votes ahead of time, and that's why I support Mr. Chairman's bill. But this goes hand in hand with the Chairman's bill to give the voters confidence in the outcome, because then you can see how many people voted in each precinct and how many registered voters there are in each precinct, and nobody can come in after the election and say more people voted than are registered. So we can do away with that argument. The other part, and I know the registrars and them don't want to do it. It's a lot more work, but I'll tell you this, we're shooting rockets off into space at Wallops Island. We can figure out what precinct a voter is from.
Let me ask you this, Senator Suderland. Does it make sense to put an enactment clause on this bill to require the Department of Elections to come up with an implementation strategy and report back to the General Assembly in December? Or at some point?
Mr. Chairman, I think that this governor's race is going to be a very important every governor's race is important. I think this one's probably going to be one that we look back on as a little more important. I do not want to spend November, December, and January following up, telling folks, hopefully I'll be telling them, the Republican won legitimately, don't be upset. But I don't want to be telling anyone from either side spending that much time trying to explain it. When I heard, you never like to hear someone that just doesn't like your bill, but the most upsetting thing I heard was that this doesn't help the voters at all, because I have spent too much time trying to talk to good, reasonable folks about the election, because everything that they saw on election night runs counter to every other election night they've seen before. And it's completely reasonable. It was because there was so much early vote. And those of us that worked the polls outside, or I worked the polls outside Roanoke County like every third day. And so I got a pretty good sense of how the election was looking, having done that before. But this was not everyone can do that. And we need to make sure folks have confidence in the elections. I believe there's nothing we can do more than just accurately reporting the results by precinct to help restore more confidence.
Okay, the bill is before the committee.
Move to report.
Second.
Is there further motion, or is there a further motion, or is there further discussion? If not, please open the roll. And Senator Boysko, I just saw on the toll that you wanted to speak. Did you?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to chime in and say that this is a bipartisan bill, that I think that all of us have had significant conversations with our constituents who are concerned about the way that the turnout showed, and I appreciate the patron.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for imposing on the time here. I just want to say briefly, I hear the concerns, but frankly, we need to restore trust and faith in our elections. And if that means that we have to spend a little money or people have to take a little time, then so be it. Because regardless of whether we believe some of these stories or not, many people do. And if it will restore confidence and faith, I thank the patron. We have to take these steps.
The vote.
And Mr. Chairman, this is not going to resurrect Donald Trump. Y'all might as well stop trying to resurrect Donald Trump.
I
He's
appreciate
gone.
Senator Spruill. We've gone a half hour and we've got one bill down.
14 knows one.
Okay, your bill's reported.
I
Senator
thank the chairman
Steph.
and the committee.
Senate Joint Resolution 322. Senator Steph. This is a joint resolution we've seen before.
Try this again. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. The reason this is brought up this year is a little bit different. So this year we're actually, well, let me go back and hit 30 seconds on background, present the bill, and then I'll be quiet and answer questions. So in the past, we've had 53% of absentee ballots that were requested by the military returned. This past year, we had just over 60%. Well, that may seem like a small amount, but when you talk about over 1 million ballots in just one state, that's a tremendous amount. Being deployed overseas, I can give you firsthand knowledge that it's very difficult, not only in some of the locations to receive your absentee ballots, but to be able to turn them around and send them back in without compromising the mission you're on. One of the things we asked to do was conduct a study, so have the State Board of Elections conduct a study and look at procedures and processes related to accessibility, auditability, authentication, verification, and security through encryption or whatever other means in order to ensure that the process implemented would guarantee the accuracy and integrity of the military overseas ballots. The issue that's going on is one that we've had for years. Some states have figured out how to solve it. We, on the other hand, when we had the opportunity to do a pilot program, we could never get it off the ground because at the time in the administration, there was no real motivation to do that. The motivation was to delay, defer, and not get it done. So what we want to do now is just look at studying it. Is it a possibility? How can you do it in a practical way? Who should participate in this? And we're saying it should be the Secretary of Veterans and Defense Affairs or his designee. Carlos Hopkins would be a perfect individual on this. He does a great job representing our military and everything about the military. Commissioner of Elections or their designee, local election board members, State Board of Elections, and groups to assist from either the state, local, or federal agencies that show interest or want to get involved with doing this. Legislative representatives, veteran service organizations, and other entities with technical expertise relevant to the study. Mr. Chairman, what we're trying to do is just look at the possibility of doing this. Is it possible? Can it be done? How are some states doing it and other states not?
And Senator Steph, let
What's
me
the
ask
possibility?
you, is this identical or nearly identical to legislation you introduced in 2019 and 2020?
No, sir. Each of those times we actually put in to do a pilot program itself.
So this is just a study of the pilot program?
This is a study to see if it's possible and feasible.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Evan.
I support the idea of the bill, but I just question whether doing a pilot program that you only let some people vote this way in a limited area would be constitutional, but I'm going to vote for it anyway. But I'm just telling you that when it comes back, that if you only let people in one jurisdiction vote this way, that I may have a problem with that.
Mr. Chair and Senator Evans, this to look at it, and if the group comes back, the study group that comes back says, hey, you know what? We're looking at just deployed military who are overseas. They come back and say, hey, you know what? We should be able to use this for anybody who's deployed, anybody who's away from their house and doesn't have the opportunity to get back to Virginia, or it would be difficult for them to receive an absentee ballot.
Are there additional questions
Mr.
for Senator
Chairman.
Staff? Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the intent of this bill. My predecessor, Senator Puller, used to put in a bill similar to this repeatedly. It was a big passion of hers. And it's a real problem. I represent the Quantico Marine Corps base, and I know that in the last special election that we just had, there was 800 absentee ballots that went out, but they only had 5 days to get them back. And I'm pretty sure none of them came back because the special election happened so quickly. And so right now, whenever you have a special election, basically anybody who's abroad, and I'm not just talking military, but there's people in our foreign service, there's people that are expats that are out, and they just can't even vote because it's not logistically possible. And so, from my perspective, obviously I think the military have a good case to make given they're serving our country, but so is the foreign service, and so are many expats that are over there also. It just seems to me we maybe ought to be looking at all of them, but I do think it's a problem we need to figure out.
Are there others in the committee that want to speak? I think we've got some some members of the public that want to address this bill. And I didn't do this last time, and I want 4 minutes of public comment total. So who's first?
Audrey Malagon, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Dr. Audrey Malagon. I'm a mathematics professor here in Virginia, but I'm speaking today as a subject matter expert with Verified Voting, a national nonprofit and nonpartisan organization promoting election and security. I'm speaking in opposition of this study because I, along with other experts, agree there is just no way to transfer votes over the internet without compromising either their secrecy or their security. I completely believe that voters, including the military, deserve to have confidence in this election, and no state has been able to give them a secure option. With so many election administration changes recently implemented or proposed this session, we urge you not to spend valuable resources on an unnecessary study. The risks of internet voting have already been studied, and the results are clear. Internet voting is subject to voter authentication attacks, malware on users' devices, denial of service attacks, widespread privacy violations, and more. A recent study by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine stated that the technology to return marked ballots securely and anonymously over the internet simply does not exist, despite new technologies, even blockchain. The National Institute of Standards and Technology report had similar findings. Virginia itself has already released a study which outlined numerous risks to allowing marked ballots to be returned electronically. We have all experienced our share of technological glitches or worse this year, and Virginia has moved away from problematic equipment. Virginia is now emerging as a leader in election security with paper ballots, risk-limiting audit pilots. Internet voting for the military means we will exclude our service members from any authentic auditing process, and we will take away the ability to recover their votes in the event of a cyber attack. Verified Voting supported legislation passed by the General Assembly last session, which actually makes voting more efficient and accessible to overseas voters because it allows properly postmarked paper ballots to be counted even after they arrive shortly after Election Day. On behalf of Verified Voting, I urge you to protect the integrity of our active duty military members' votes and oppose this study. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
And thank you very much. Senator Donovan, I just saw your name in the queue, and do you have a question for this person, or do you want to wait until after public comment?
I'll wait. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Who's next from the public?
Lisa Gershik, please unmute and go ahead.
Morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lisa Coteen-Gerchik. I chair the League of Women Voters of Virginia's Election Security Issues Group and co-author the League's election law study that specifically includes internet voting. The League opposes SJR 322. The country's foremost computer experts who study election security all say the same thing. Internet voting is insecure and will be for the foreseeable future. In a year in which the integrity of our elections has been subject to question, the last thing we need is to risk insecure methods of casting ballots. Virginia is going to have its first ever statewide audit of a presidential election this month, similar to other states' ballot audits that proved election equipment operated properly during the general election in November. Electronically transmitted ballots, however, cannot be audited, only voter-verified paper ballots. We all want our military and overseas voters to exercise the franchise, but they must be able to vote without the risk of malicious actors interfering with their ballots. The answer is paper ballots, not internet voting. We urge you to oppose SJR 322. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there additional speakers in the public?
At this time, there are no.
Okay, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment and respond particularly. I have just gone through the process in my medical practice of transmitting narcotic prescriptions online with a very secure system. Now, perhaps it is a different system that is being asked to look at in this study, and maybe we need to look at all comers. But this is so ironic to me that we know, we have clear evidence that our military and overseas Americans cannot vote with the paper system we have in place. We know that, and we know they don't, and we know they can't return it, and they have 5 days, and we have all sorts of other extraordinary issues. We want everybody to be able to vote. That has been our mantra. We need to look at creative ways that the military has access to voting, and I think maybe you need to open up the study and look at that, but there is no problem we cannot overcome. And I would like, if this were a medical analysis, we'd be saying, what is the relative risk of the ballots being compromised versus the relative risk of those people being denied the opportunity to vote? And the relative risk of them being denied the opportunity to vote outweighs other risks. And I hope we will proceed with looking at this and maybe consider it in a different way if there's a lot of research that's available about ways that don't work, and let's find ways that do.
Okay, the Senate Joint Resolution 322 is before the committee.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to report and a second. Are there other motions?
Mr. Chairman.
Substitute motion.
Senator Boysko.
Move to pass by indefinitely.
Okay, is there a second on that for that motion? A motion and a second for a substitute motion to pass by indefinitely.
Mr. Chairman, speaking of the motion.
Well, Senator Servell was before you, but Senator Servell, then Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, what I would like to see in this is a look at all overseas votes and not just the military. I mean, I think the military has a pretty good case to make, so do foreign service officers, and there's some other people that are overseas as well that I think it ought to be looked at comprehensively and not just as a military issue, from my perspective. And I think those are amendments that could be made between now and the floor pretty easily. I don't think that's feasible to do it right now in committee, but I'm sure I could work with Senator DeStaff if this passes. But that's what I would like to see before it goes off the floor, from my point of view.
Okay, Senator Reeves.
Mr. Chairman, as many in this chamber know, I've been an advocate for this for some time, and it's not the first time we've heard this, and I think it's reasonable to ask to look at what our options are. And I would just like to refute one of the statements about it's not being done anywhere. I'm looking at Alabama at their webpage for their Alabama Secretary of State, and it talks about military and overseas absentee voting. It says and I'm just going to read it from the official website. It says military and overseas voters may now choose to receive their ballots for federal offices either electronically or by regular U.S. mail. And it goes through and it talks about military and other overseas citizens are welcome to use the standard procedure for absentee voting by mail. However, there are also special provisions for members of the U.S. Armed Forces, Merchant Marine, Commissioned Corps of Public Health Service, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, along with family members of all these groups, other citizens who reside outside. I would think that's the expats. In addition to that, and it goes through there, and they've been able to do it pretty effectively from what I understand. So I think it's worth a shot to at least look at the issue.
Thank you, Senator Boysko.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. I agree with the concept of trying to make sure that our military and overseas people have safe and secure ballots. However, the data does not show that. There are significant risks from outside bad actors. We know that Russia has been working to infiltrate our system for years now. The data, I believe the data is there, and that we have the information that we need. We need the technology people to actually solve the problem, not identify that it's a problem. We know that it's a problem, and that's why I've suggested that we pass the buy bill.
Senator Donovan, your name has gone on and off. Are you want to speak?
Mine, Mr. Chairman. So I do want to speak, and I'm just going to say we have conflicting data here. We have states that are doing this. We have 2 people who testified that there was evidence you couldn't do it. When there's conflicting data, let's do a study and figure out how we can make it work for Virginia. People need to be able to have access to voting. This is so ironic to me. I cannot believe we're having this conversation. I hope we will defeat the motion that is currently on the floor and move forward with passing this on to the floor of the Senate.
And the motion currently on the floor is to pass by indefinitely. Unless there are others who want to speak, I'd ask the clerk to open the roll.
Mr. Chair, I am unable to vote on my thing, so, well, no, I'm pressing home and it's not working, so I will. Is this? Oh. It looks like you're done. And then are you voting for Mason? Because it has your CA. Okay. I do, but that part isn't. Mr. Chair, I'm gonna, it's not letting me vote for Senator Mason, so I'm gonna abstain because I don't know how he wants to vote on this motion.
Okay. And how do you want to vote?
I vote no on the motion.
Close vote.
Ayes 4, nays 9. How does Senator McClellan wish to vote?
Nay.
Okay.
And the proxy for Senator Mason is abstain.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are back to the main motion. The main motion is to report. Please open the roll.
Wait, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the patron if he would be open to 2 amendments. I agree with Senator Saravel, and maybe this is an amendment that needs to happen on the floor, but I'd like to hear from the patron that he would be willing to amend the bill to include any overseas ballots and not just the military ones first.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, I am very happy to do so. I don't want to disenfranchise anybody who's deployed overseas. A lot of our military actually are working for other government agencies while they're there. So I would truly see that as a friendly amendment. Thank you, and I'm happy to do it and have it prepared before the floor.
Second, I guess this is a question, as I'm a little confused by the under your bill, the Secretary of Administration would make a recommendation to the governor and the General Assembly, but this pilot, whatever pilot they recommend, would not take effect unless approved by the General Assembly. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, for something like that to happen in a pilot program, the funding has to be approved by the General Assembly. So there would not be a pilot program unless it came back through the General Assembly where we approve the funding for it. That's my understanding of how it's working. That's my intent of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And to be clear, Senator, this is Steph, the pilot program was what your 2019 bill and 2020 bill, both bills which did not pass, but that's what the pilot program was proposed by both of those bills.
Mr. Chair, that's correct. We actually laid out a pilot program, and again, the information that was used against it was out of studies that I've honestly read, some of them 20, 30, 40 years old, and I understood the concerns of those, but I believe that, and the study needs to look at this and say, hey, is the technology there or not?
Okay.
Some people believe it is, some people believe it's not. That's why we'd like to study it, Mr. Chairman.
We've got a motion to report. I'd ask the clerk to open the roll.
Did we adopt the amendment?
I don't know that an amendment was made.
Not been written yet.
She simply asked that if he was open to an amendment, so we've not made there's not an amendment before us. So just a motion to report.
Ayes 11, noes 3, and 1 abstention.
Okay, the bill is reported. Senator Saslow, I think, is in the room.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator
Senator Saslow?
Senator Stanley's
here. Well, I was trying to get through the bills, but Senator Stanley, if you want to present you've got a Senate joint resolution. And you told me the other night that this called for a 2022 referenda. Is that an amendment you intend to make because the bill itself calls for a 20? Okay. Saslow, you'll be after Stanley. Okay. Senator Stanley wants to make an amendment. Has joint resolution 1109, it's SB 1109. It calls for a referendum for general obligation bonds for school facility modernization. It was for a 2021 referendum. That, of course, would have a fiscal impact. It's too late to go to finance now, so I think Senator Stanley's moving to amend that 2021 to 2022.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for that amendment.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for that amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, so the bill is before you. It calls for the 2022 referenda. Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think both Mr. Chairman and myself have articulated on the floor of the Senate and in every opportunity we can that we have a multi-billion-dollar problem facing us, and that comes in the form of the need to modernize our schools, especially so in our inner cities and rural areas and our less affluent areas. We are not providing equal educational opportunities to our children because the facilities themselves are crumbling. We have so many schools that have been built before World War II, some that have been that are in operation that were built around World War I. In Lee County alone, we have one of those World War I schools where there's only one electrical outlet per classroom. And they use, of course, these strips that we have and we're using here to energize our computers, but they're so afraid that they're going to blow out the panels that they don't have the whiteboards and the computers that we see and that we sometimes take for granted in the more affluent areas like Loudoun County, Arlington, and Fairfax County. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pervasive problem that's in our inner cities and our rural areas that needs to be addressed. So what this bill attempts to do is to put real money. Mr. Chairman, you and I have talked about how do we get real money to this issue. This does not solve, ladies and gentlemen, the total problem. It is in excess of $3 billion that problem is. But this bill asks the voters to tell us, should school modernization be a priority? And if it is, do you want us to authorize the issuance of $3 billion in bonds to pay for modernization based on need of our schools?
Senator Stanley, I would ask you, aren't there studies that show that the problem is one that is in excess of $18 billion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the chairman by saying exactly.
So wouldn't we need to go back and do a $3 billion bond issue at least 5 or 6 times to try to
Mr. Chairman,
problem?
I would love that, but I think realistically, we've got to look at what we can afford to do with the bond issue. $3 billion is going to do a lot. And you've seen other states, Mr. Chairman, like California and Pennsylvania, who have, in Maryland even, just above us, just to the north of us, who've put $3 billion bonds on the table for school modernization.
Mr. Chairman?
We have to make sure that our children are getting the same education in Petersburg and Hampton as they are in Loudoun and Leesburg.
Senator Sproul has a question.
Then how can we assure, let me use Chesapeake for example, I know about Chesapeake. How can we be assured that the money that goes to the school system decides on where the schools go? In Chesapeake, I'm going to talk about it especially.
Yes, sir.
Talking about the Republican part of Chesapeake, by the way. The best schools are in the southern part of the Chesapeake and the northern part of Chesapeake, low-income folks, the school system does not make sure that those schools are upgraded are new schools. And we got a good school system in Chesapeake, okay? Good school system. But when we talk about building schools, the school system take the money and put it in the southern part of Chesapeake. The northern part of Chesapeake, old schools that you're saying. So if this money is granted, how can we make sure that they get some of that money to build those schools up in the poor section of Chesapeake?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying I'm reminded of when we went to Booker T. Washington High School together, and we saw and inspected that school, and what we saw was a crumbling school. But there may be good schools in one part of a county and maybe not so in another, or a city. But if you remember, Senator McClellan and I put forth a bill that just passed the Senate where we have created a fund that will help in the repairing and modernization of schools based on need. And I would think that the school divisions and the Department of Education would develop a system by which we could determine where the greatest need was in order to modernize these schools.
Mr. Chairman, that was the question. The question was, you're right what you're saying, but if the schools board in those cities, if they are going to determine to modernize that Booker T school that you and I went to together, if the school board, so what happens if the money is granted to that school that we went to, it's in Norfolk? What happens if the school board says, well, we better take the school and put it in this area, not those schools that are run down? We want this money that's given to us, we want to put it here, not in those areas that's run down. So how can we make sure to cover what you want to do, to make sure that those old schools with one socket modernized and built back up, how can we make sure to let them know this money is to look out for those old, dilapidated schools? That's my question. How can we make sure they can do that?
Mr. Chairman, this bill does not address that. This bill just has the public tell us that this is a priority and we need to do it. There are other mechanisms, and I agree totally with you. This money shouldn't be given to a school division and that pours it into a school that's already up-to-date, modern, or not degrading or not crumbling around the ears of the children. And the Department of Education, I think this General Assembly, once we agree that this is a multi-billion-dollar problem that we must solve, I think we can then put the tools in the toolbox and create those mechanisms that you want to make sure that that money goes to the right school in the poor districts. Because what we're trying to do is make sure that those children have that chance at the American dream and get the same education, get taught computer coding in second grade. But you know, the schools are crumbling, so they don't get the computers. They don't have the modernization. And we have to do this.
Well,
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Stanley, let me ask you, have you looked at how we handle the debt service for a $3 billion bond issue?
I have.
Okay, how do we do that?
Well, we pay it off over term. But what we do is we appropriate the money and put it aside, so we've dedicated that resource. Now,
Where does the money come from, though?
the money can come from a number of sources that we determine. As you notice, we did make a commitment last year to put for school modernization through the governor from casino money. You have the potential of revenue of marijuana. You have clearly that's going to be legalized.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, have you factored the $3 billion into this our debt capacity models?
Mr. Chairman, I am not honored enough to sit on with Madam Chair in Finance and Appropriations here in the Senate.
Mr. Chairman.
I have not sat down and done the numbers, but where are we going to do it, what are we going to do, and how are we going to do it is the question. Now, Mr. Chairman, this is an advisory referendum. Last time we were here, that's what you guys did, is you made it advisory. So we can take this vote of confidence one way or the other. The public may vote no, Public says, no, we don't want to have that kind of debt service. The public could say, we don't want to dedicate those resources to modernize schools in the inner
Mr.
cities.
Chairman.
And rural areas. And then that takes care of that.
Senator Surville's dying to say something.
I know, but he always is. And Mr. Chairman, is it just me, or does it feel like Senator Surville filed more than 12 bills? Because I swear, it still feels like he filed 30.
It's not just you.
I'm just saying.
It's not just you, I promise.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I work in mysterious ways. But can I just say that, you know, I mean, Senator Stanley had me on his subcommittee where we traveled the state looking at this problem, and there's no question in my mind there's a problem. I have, I think, a different view than him, though, as to part of what the causes of it are. And, you know, I was just poking around here, and I see that the property tax rate in Franklin County is 61 cents per hundred. In Fairfax, it's $1.15 a hundred. In Prince William, it's $1.12 per hundred. So some of these localities are taxing themselves at half the rate of other parts of Virginia. And I know that some people might say, well, you know, they can't afford it or something. I feel like this is the ghost of Grover Norquist in part. But I would also just say that the counties also just begged and begged and begged us for all this new taxing authority, which we gave them last year. And I haven't seen a single county yet use any of this new taxing authority, which allows them to tax people who are not their own constituents to pay for things. And so for me to support something like this, first of all, I would want to see a local match against any kind of state dollars we put in, because these localities need to start stepping up and funding services instead of expecting the rest of us to pay for everything. And secondly, it's consistent with what the senator from Northern Chesapeake said. I know some of this would probably come to Fairfax County, even though some people probably don't think we need it, but we do. We do have a big backlog in Fairfax. But I have serious concerns about how the money would get spent once it's sort of digested through the political process, and the loudest, noisiest voters in the room that know how to scream and lobby their school board get their attention, versus a lot of the folks who I represent who tend not to know how to organize. And so, to me, you know, it's an idea worth exploring, but we're just not quite there yet in terms of how to exactly implement this. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we put a reenactment clause on it, and we continue the discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
If I may just address, because I know there was a question in there somewhere.
Isn't that true?
Yeah. You know, and Senator Surville's family comes from Franklin County. But Senator Surville sometimes forgets that, you know, as I grew up in Northern Virginia and watched...
I mean, he was poor one time?
Yes. Yes. And so I watched Northern Virginia transform from the 70s to when I left in the early 2000s. I also watched the transformation go the opposite direction in our inner cities and rural areas that were the captains of industry in manufacturing, textile, tobacco, coal, and even furniture manufacturing. We have a really difference in our family of four per capita income that I think dictates sometimes the tax policy at the local level. Where you have a family of four average income of over $100,000, Franklin County, Henry County, Martinsville, Patrick has a family of four per capita income of $36,000. So the ability to pay is a problem. And that's why in the more affluent counties, you're seeing in Loudoun County beautiful schools, modern schools being built almost on a regular basis as the population explodes. We're patching up holes in a roof on a school that was built before World War II.
Okay, we've got a motion for a reenactment clause and a second to that motion. I think I heard that. All in favor of the reenactment clause, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Well, I think the ayes have it, but if we want to take a recorded vote on that to make sure. Oh.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Okay. You were close. Sproul, I think Sproul's, going to probably vote red on just about everything, but that's on this bill. Well, the bill's before you. It calls for an advisory referendum next year with a reenactment clause that will have to be, it'll have to be approved again next year. I've got, besides Senator Surville, I've got two other names.
Mr. Chairman, put me in there.
You're fourth on the list. Senator Howell.
with this last vote, my blood pressure has kind of gone down. But there's no doubt in my mind if we do an advisory referendum, it's going to pass overwhelmingly because Virginians love their schools and they want their kids to have a good education. And then we come bouncing into the problem of the bonding. And will it threaten our AAA bond rating? And I really believe it will, or it will force us to take away bonding from other high priority objects such as higher education. We aren't keeping up with higher education's need currently. So I just want to put out some cautionary notes for when this might come back next year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since my county's been referenced a few times, I felt the need to say something. Look, I believe in the Commonwealth, and I have a problem if we have children in schools that aren't safe. I mean, I've had stories of, and matter of fact, I even did some funding drive to buy, believe it or not, toilet seats for schools that didn't have that. It's ridiculous. And children have to wear masks or be in unsafe schools. That's unacceptable. I'm with you 100%. But one thing I want to say is, while my county may seem very affluent, we got people who are struggling to make it because they have very high mortgages, they pay super high tolls, they have a lot of expenses. And the other part is we also have taken bonds out to pay for these schools. And we've got this debt that we're leveraging, and there's other locations that haven't taken that step. They haven't made education a priority. Our residential tax, as Senator Sobel said, is much higher than many other places because our residents really make this a priority. I'm willing to do this as a Commonwealth solution. I think we need to address this. I agree 100%. But we need to have equity when we do it because everybody needs to step up to the plate to the extent they can to work this problem because it's a universal problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Bell. And let me just say, you know, one of the high honors that I get to do now is be chair of the Capital Outlay Subcommittee. Our debt model is based on keeping debt at less than 5% of our revenue. We are right at 5% right now, and modeled over the next 10 years, we'll actually have 3 years where we're slightly above 5%. Now, if the revenue changes, that changes. But I can tell you right now that we are in a very difficult spot in terms of incurring billions of dollars worth of debt down the road. So the bill is before the committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, you didn't hear me speak. Bless your heart.
I apologize. Senator Spruill and then Senator Servo.
Maybe because I'm being a Republican today, you not taking my calls.
I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, I've heard someone saying about the debt, but you fail to realize the gentleman from Franklin, Stanley, what he's trying to do, he's really trying to help the schools all across the state. And then someone says, it is no secret. I've heard 1,000 times since I've been up here. Northern Virginia carries the rest of the part of the state. Am I right about that?
You are.
Okay, well, that's fine. But look in this room. Let's tell the truth in this room. How many people in this room who got plenty of money? You don't supposed to call the name. I'm not going to call Janet Howard's name because you don't supposed to. I'm not going to call Dick Saslaw, who's a millionaire. You don't supposed to. I'm not going to call Jill Vogel. You don't supposed to. I'm not going to call Scott Serbell, who forgot that he was poor, now he's rich. You don't supposed to. I'm not going to call Mr. Bear. He's a rich man. You don't supposed to. So they from North Virginia. That's why. Now, if they live like the way that me and my friend here next to me, where we live, understand, they got money. That's why North Virginia do it. I love North Virginia. Janet Howard's my specialty because I know she got plenty of money. Okay? So, Senator Stanley, you have not forgotten where you come from. We need to pray for Scott Serbia. Thank you.
I'm praying for him. I'm praying for him.
Well, is there somebody else that wants to? The bill is before the committee.
Move the report.
Are there other motions or any other comments? If not, open the roll, please.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Okay, congratulations, Senator Stanley. Your bill is reported. Senator Saslaw is in the room.
I have one other bill, do I
Oh,
not?
that's right, you do have one other room.
And this is staying on the same topic, Mr. Chairman. That's Senate Joint Resolution 275.
Okay, Senate Joint Resolution 275 calls for equality in educational funding.
And Mr. Chairman, it really just calls for an Article 8, Section 1 amendment with adding certain words. You know, in our Constitution, we provide for a system of a free public education in secondary schools for all of our children. And I've said this on the floor before as well, and you know that our greatest natural resource is our children. And you would be surprised to know that the vast majority of children that attend public schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia do not go on to college. So this is our workforce pipeline that we have to maintain in order to keep businesses here, bring businesses here, and raise the economy of our localities that may be struggling. Because then when you bring that talent pool together, you can help a child break the cycle of poverty. My father was poor, would never go to college, would never have had an opportunity at college unless he worked hard in high school and became the valedictorian, got a scholarship in the Navy. He did it for the person he didn't even know who's standing before you now at that time. Because he knew that if he could break the cycle of poverty for himself, then it would never be a cycle that his children would have to suffer under. And he did that for us. We promise our students, we promise our families a free education at the elementary and secondary level. But what we don't in that Constitution, because it just says we seek to achieve these things, is we don't promise our students and our families that we're going to give equal educational opportunities to every child, regardless of their zip code. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this constitutional amendment, I think, is significant in making sure not just that we're modernizing schools, but that the child in Chesapeake is getting the same education as the child in Northern Virginia, that they're getting that computer coding at the second grade level, that they're going to, when they graduate, they have the equal diploma. Because unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, what I see right now is the child maybe in my area, because we don't have a modernized school, we don't have the capacity, is not getting the same education as a child. And I say this with peace and love. I graduated from Fairfax County Schools. And so they come out unequal. One is more highly trained perhaps for a 21st century workforce and an economy, and the other may not be. And so therefore, my amendment to the Constitution simply would do this. It would say that the General Assembly shall provide for a system of free public elementary and secondary schools with equal educational opportunities for all.
Senator Stanley, let me ask you this. Since the majority of funding for the educational system in Virginia comes from local government, would this require the General Assembly to transfer locally raised tax dollars from, say, Chesapeake to Bath County?
Mr. Chairman, I do not foresee that to be a problem or an issue at all. Remember, and the other part, if I may, Mr. Chairman, of the amendment of the Constitution is in the third paragraph of Section 1, Article 8, which says the General Assembly shall determine the manner in which funds are to be provided for the cost of maintaining an educational program meeting the prescribed standards of quality and shall ensure that all children of school age are provided with equal educational opportunities. The key here is an equal educational opportunity because it's going to benefit the Commonwealth.
Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Stanley, I think I agree almost with everything that you said. But there is a huge difference between equality and equity. Equality means giving every student the exact same resources. Equity means you are giving each student what they need to get to the same result. If you all have seen, there's a graph going around where there's a fence at a baseball game. You have a 6-foot person, a 4-foot person, and a 2-foot person trying to look over the fence. Equality means you give everyone a 2-foot box, but some still can't see over the fence. Equity means you give each person the size box they need so that they all see over the fence at the same height. Justice would be if we took the fence away altogether. But my concern with your bill as written is I think you will unintentionally harm our ability to provide equity. And because of historic racism, historic underfunding of our schools, and inequity baked into the system how we fund our schools through the local composite index and through localities through property taxes, I think what you need is to put equity into the Constitution, not equality. And so I don't know if that's an amendment you're willing to make, but while I support what you're trying to do, putting equality into the Constitution is going to frustrate our ability to provide equity and continue to bake inequity into our state constitution, which is something I don't think any of us in this room want to do.
Senator Stanley, do you want to respond, or do you want the next speaker to?
I'll respond by saying this. Every child, no matter where they come from, no matter the color of their skin, who has the same opportunity at a high-quality education, makes the most of that opportunity, is going to then be not only receiving an equal education, but having the same outcome. My bill is not intended to create inequity, and I don't think this is anything that would harm our ability to make sure that every child receives a fair and a good education, which gives them a fair and good opportunity at achieving the American dream. To say that somehow I'm creating some inequity by trying to create equal educational opportunities is just not my intent. I certainly am always willing, Mr. Chairman, to work with Senator McClellan at every opportunity, and I think we've done that, whether it's been school discipline or other important issues, even school modernization. But I want every child, regardless of their zip code, to come out when they've got that diploma that they've worked so hard for, that it means the same thing, that it creates the same opportunities. You know, and there's always a difference between opportunity and outcome, because those that make the most of their opportunities compared to those that may not make the most of their opportunities, no matter who they are or where they come from, then those outcomes may be different. But I thank you for your insight, and I mean no harm to what you're trying to say. I just don't think what I'm doing here necessarily has the end result.
Senator Boyce, go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love the heart that you bring to this conversation, and I think that the discussion that we've had on this, as well as the previous bill, are really important. I will tell you one thing that I'm afraid that there might be an unintended consequence, and maybe somebody else could answer, is in Fairfax County, for instance, we go above and beyond, and in Loudoun County, we go above and beyond the SOQ requirements and provide extra resources and opportunities for the students. My concern here, and it's really, I want all the kids to have an equitable education as well. My concern here is that somehow this language is going to limit what localities could do, and I'd love to have somebody else respond on that, because I don't think that's what you're intending. I know you're trying to rise all boats and make sure that everybody has, you know, all the kids in Franklin County and in Bath County have the same opportunities. But how do we manage that when one locality has already invested way more in their school system and possibly would be limited? I'm honestly just a little bit confused about what this language would do, but I love the concept of what you're trying to do, and I am with you in spirit and want to find a way to make sure that all of our kids are treated with the best opportunities.
And Mr. Chair, I'd only say that this is not a limiting change to the Constitution. This is expanding.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Love the bill. That conversation about equal and equity really resonated with me. Does it do any harm to your bill to change the language to equity instead of equal? Because I think it makes sense.
If you have something, or Senator McClellan has something to propose, I'd certainly listen to it.
Mr. Chair,
Senator McClellan.
I propose that on line 20, we strike equal and insert equitable. And on line 28, strike equal and insert equitable.
No objection to that, Mr. Chairman.
Does everybody understand the amendments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we're talking about equitable educational opportunities for all children of school age. Okay. Are there those in the public who want to speak to this bill?
At this time, there are no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, the bill is before you, the first reading of a constitution to create equitable educational opportunities.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
I just want to say I fully I fully support the idea to empower our liberal activist courts to mess with our education system.
Mr. Chairman, I move the report as amended.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Are there further motions? Is there further discussion? If not, please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, your bill's reported. Senator Saslaw's in the room. He's been waiting for a while. Senator Saslaw has Senate Bill 1444, and the first thing you have a substitute for that bill, is that correct? Brooks is a substitute up online for 1444.
Mr. Chairman, yes, the substitute should be online. It's been released a while ago.
I guess the first motion is to incorporate Senate Bill 1377 into the bill and list Senator Suderline as the chief co-patron.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second on that. Is all in favor say aye? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the second thing, the substitutes online, we have to record this is the incorporation vote.
Ayes 12, no zero.
Okay, the bill's incorporated. The second motion is to adopt the substitute, and according to Brooks, it's online. Okay, a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, the substitutes before you, Senator Saslaw.
In that bill was that you would report every campaign contribution over $1,000 between January 1st and the start of the session. And the problem that occurred, and some of you may have been affected by this, I know a lot were, was in doing it that way, it crashed the NGP system. It was just they couldn't handle the volume. So what this essentially says is you'll report contributions between January 1st and the day before the session in one report. So that means on January 15th, instead of having just one report, that's the one we currently have, that's July 1st. Well, actually, we got July 1st to December 31st. That's due on the 15th. You would file actually two reports. The one that we normally do, July 1st to December 31st, plus January 1st to the day before the session. So instead of filing each check and crashing the system, you would do it that way with two reports. And I mean, to give you an idea what happened, it showed a lot of people not raising any money. The system just crashed and went. I mean, they had to redo it. It showed me not raising any money between July 1st and December 31st, when in fact I had raised a considerable sum. So it took a while to straighten all that out. So that's why I put the bill in.
Okay, does everybody understand the bill? Are there questions of the patron? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this issue?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Lisa Gershik, please unmute and go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Lisa Gerchik from the League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League of Women Voters supports SB 1444. Detailed and timely disclosure of campaign contributions is critical for a trusted electoral system, particularly for contributions made just before the start of a General Assembly session. This bill will require disclosure. We urge the committee to support Senator Slaslow's bill.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't think it's in any trouble. Thank you very much. Anybody else?
At this time, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, motion and a second to report. Are there further motions? Is there any other discussion? If not, please open the roll. Yeah, he was listed as chief co-patron on that prior recorded vote.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zeros. Your bill is reported. Thank you, Senator Saslaw. Okay, what I'd like to do is we've got one more bill, and then we've got. You've got another bill?
A constitutional amendment.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's easy to explain.
SJ 310. Please give your attention to Senator Saslaw.
Since the Virginia Constitution was rewritten in 1972, we've had, I think this is the 25th short session every other year, odd-numbered years. In no instance have we ever been able to do it in 30 days. And what this says is that 30-day session, we would change that to say 46 days, because that's what, with the exception of one that we did in 45, every session's been 46, every odd year session. And as a result of what happened this year with not extending it at the end of the 30-day mark, we've actually made this session's probably going to be 48 or 49 days as a result. So what I did was I just changed this. Now, if you'll notice in the constitutional amendment, it does spell out the 30-day session, the 60-day session can be extended for 30 days. And the 30-day session currently can be extended for 30 days. If you want, you can amend it to say that odd year session, if you make it 46 days, can only be extended to no longer than a total of 60 days. That would keep it at its total at where it currently is. So, but we've never been able to do or even come close to doing a 30-day session.
Okay.
So it's silly to keep it in the Constitution.
Does everybody understand what Senator Saslaw's joint resolution does? Are there any questions of the patron?
A motion.
Is there any? First, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this issue?
At this time, Mr. Chair, there are no hands raised.
Okay, I'm ready for a motion.
Move to report.
A motion and a second to report. Are there further motions or discussion? If not, please open the roll. Senator Peake, I apologize. Destroy the roll. Senator
I was
Peake.
going to say something, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that we have not done it in 30 days before. But I tell you, and a question to Mr. Chairman, is this our last day in this committee? We will have
This is our last day in this committee, Senator Peake.
And I think we're doing a pretty good job of getting through all our bills, and we're going to send them all over. I know there's some issues in finance, but I like this bill limit that we've put on it and limit it to 8 and then 4.
But this schedule doesn't have us getting finished in 30 days.
I think we ought to try and do it in 30 days. And so I like keeping that bill limit, and that's why I'd be against this.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question about the language of the bill as I read it. It looks like on line 23, it still says 2/3 of the member elected to each house in a regular session may be extended for a period not exceeding 30 days. You know what? I think I read it wrong, Mr. Chairman. It's not.
Should be changed to say 14 days.
14 days.
For the odd year session.
Right.
And 30 days for the even year currently.
So do we need to
But
change that?
that should be an amendment.
All right, I thought I was looking at the amendment, and perhaps I'm not.
Brooks,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there an amendment needed to accomplish Senator Saslaw's intent?
Mr. Chairman, yes, in order to make that change, we need to make an amendment to the bill.
Well, then I would ask Senator Evan to withdraw his motion.
Withdraw my motion.
Okay.
In answer, by the way, while he's doing that to Senator Peake, the fact is we couldn't even come close to doing this in 30 days. And if we tried to do it in that, we couldn't get January's numbers, which would be more reflective and realistic of what our revenue situation is than relying just on December's. That's the problem with doing that. The other thing, as far as limitation of bills, back in 1986, there was a constitutional amendment put on the ballot to limit the bills in the odd year session to essentially budget only. It went down. 86% of the people in the state voted against that constitutional amendment.
Brooks, I think on line 23 they changed 30 to 46. Is that right?
30 goes to 46,
Mr. Chairman,
and that section can be extended 14 days.
Well, is that the amendment, Brooks?
Mr. Chairman, on line 23, after exceeding, we just strike 30 and insert 14.
Any regular, maybe extended for a period not exceeding 14.
No, that would also have the unintended effect of limiting the session in the even year as well. No?
Mr. Chairman, that's not my reading. So that whole sentence only includes odd years. So the prior sentence talks about even years, and those are capped at 60 period. And then in odd numbered years, 6 days as amended, and then not to be extended more than 14.
Does everybody understand the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote no on this, and I want to say a couple things. Number one, I'm going to tell you why.
Speaking to the amendment now.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you the reason why. I think Senator Saslaw is accurate in a number of things that he says, and I think the Senate has done a very good job of having us here in person and trying to work through things in a challenging time. But I think the reasons it's important for it to be this way is because without both bodies meeting in person and having the ability to interact and with the public, we should be required to have more stringent rules. So if this was saying increase it to that day, as long as we're meeting in person in Richmond with access to the public, you might be able to get my vote. But we don't have that. I want to say the Senate has done extraordinary links, and I want to give kudos to my colleagues for doing that and to Madam Clerk because she's done a tremendous amount to make that happen. But we need to be in person if we want to go that long and do the important things for the Commonwealth.
Okay.
Hopefully the pandemic.
Does everyone understand the amendment before us to this constitutional amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sproul.
To Senator Saslaw, you having a problem with what he was saying as far as meeting in person?
I can't hear you.
You having a problem with the senator saying as far as he had no problem with the 45 or 46 days if we're talking about meeting in person? You having a problem with that? You having a problem that if we meet in person? That's what he was speaking about. Am I right about that?
No, Mr. Chairman, Senator Sproul, that is correct.
We're in person, but I would prefer not to see that written in there because it just complicates the matters and they'll never vote for it in the House.
The amendment before us right now just changes line 30 to 14 on line 23. All in favor of that amendment, say aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment has been amended. Now, the amended amendment is before you, and I would Are we ready for a motion?
I would move to report.
Okay, Senator Eben moves to report the amended amendment. And Senator Boysko seconds it. Are there further motions or discussion? If not, please open the roll.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay. The bill is reported. Senator Chase has the only bill before us. We've got constitutional amendments after that. Senator Chase, you've got a bill that both Democrats and Republicans have introduced in the past. It's about are you still there?
Still here. Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to be brief because I know that you all have heard this bill a number of times, as you mentioned, by a number of different sponsors, both Republican and Democrat. Just refresh your memory. This is the bill that has to do with how we choose here in Virginia our electors for president and vice president, and how we allocate those electoral votes. My desire in this bill, as you all have seen before, is to do something similar to Maine and Nebraska. There are the other two states that do this. And what you're doing is you're giving an electoral vote for by the winners of the popular vote by congressional district. Each of those congressional districts who win the popular vote would then get an electoral vote. So we have 11 congressional districts here in Virginia. There would be 11 potential votes plus the 2 extra votes for a total of 13 would go to the at large.
And as you point out, we have seen this before. I think the former Senator Carrico was one of the last people to introduce it. Senator Peake, you're in the queue.
Question to the chair or perhaps to Senator Eben. Senator Eben, you withdrew your national popular vote. Is that correct? Do you know, is there one in the House?
One that we can expect from Delegate Levine to come over.
And then my question to the chair or the patron would be, if we were to pass the national popular vote, would that do away with this?
If we were to pass this legislation and pass the national popular vote, that would put us in kind of an interesting situation, I guess.
Yeah.
We take inconsistent courses, and I don't see us doing that.
Okay.
I mean, honestly,
they can't coexist, can they?
In the past, when Virginia gave its electoral votes to Republicans, Democrats introduced this bill that Senator Chase has, and the last few election cycles, Virginia's voted for Democrats. Senator Carrico introduced this bill, so it's been introduced by everybody. And there's an argument. I think we understand the argument, Senator Chase. Are there people in the public who want to speak to this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Stuart Jones, please go ahead.
How many speakers do we have?
Looks like 2 speakers.
Okay, well, no more than 4 minutes total.
Stuart Jones, please unmute and go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we've been waiting for you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm speaking briefly. As I said, I'm speaking from Fiscal College.
Can't really make you out, though. We can hear you, but we can't make you out. We can't hear you. Let's go to the next speaker, Becky Little.
Becky Little, please unmute and go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Becky Lytle from Chesterfield. Thank you for allowing me to speak. As I understand the bill, it seems it would level the playing field and across the board more fairly represent the citizens of Virginia. And that's my comment on the bill. I did want to add another comment regarding censorship of your colleagues, censoring each other and the unethical nature of it. And I find it to be something that should be really considered, the impact on the citizens of Virginia. It makes for more of a Soviet Union style of treating each other rather than with kindness and respect as we always have in Virginia. Thank you for hearing.
Okay, I'm not sure what that had to do with the bill, but that's okay.
No, it didn't. Yeah, not with the bill, just a general comment. Thank you.
Did Mr. Jones ever come out of the barrel he
Oh,
was
yeah.
in?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I rise to speak on this bill. I'm from Chesterfield County, and I'd just like to say briefly that I understand the interest in states maximizing their influence in national elections, allocating their votes in a winner-take-all manner. But while this interest is understandable, it's undesirable because it sets up situations like the mess that we just saw in Georgia recently. There's no reason for this to happen. The state and the national outcome should not be so sensitive to the outcome in just one precinct. By allocating votes by congressional district, that effectively sets up firewalls so that anomalies in one district cannot spread and contaminate the statewide vote, which would then not contaminate the national vote. People are frustrated and concerned about the electoral college system. Some have even embraced the idea of allocating our votes to the national popular winner. I maintain that that's fundamentally unconstitutional since it allocates the state votes based on votes of other states. I mean, can you imagine if some candidate won Virginia by 60% and then all of Virginia's electoral votes went to the other candidate? That's absurd.
That's
And as
another
far as the
bill, Mr.
national
Jones. Speak
popular
to this
vote,
bill.
yes, I'm saying that this is a better alternative than the national popular vote. In the sense that it avoids a situation where one district can flip an entire state, which can then flip the entire country. It would avoid situations like we saw in Florida in 2000 and like in Georgia in 2020. So I think it's a good bill. I advocate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there others?
At this time, Mr. Chair, there are no other
Okay,
hands raised.
Senator Chase, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm just going to say this real quickly. You know, one of my goals is to ensure voter confidence and that every citizen, whether they're Republican, Independent, or Democrat, feels that the Electoral College is representative of the voice of we the people. By splitting it up this way, it's, you know, Virginia is 50-50. We could go Republican or Democrat either way. I just think this gives people, instead of the winner take all, it reflects truly the voice of the people that I believe is split right now. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Chase. Senator Peake's got a comment, I think.
I'll say, I've always voted against this bill. I voted against it last year. But I tell you, I am a little concerned about voter integrity, that we have done away with photo ID, that we will not do anything to check Social Security numbers when people register to vote. And I am concerned about voter integrity. I think I'm going to support it this time.
Okay, the bill is before you. Is there a motion?
I would move to PBI.
A motion and a second to PBI. Are there further motions or additional discussion? All in favor of passing the bill by indefinitely, vote green.
Ayes 11, noes 3, 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you, Senator Chase. Okay, we have constitutional amendments left. I would go back to Senator Eben. We've got a couple of non-committee members that are in the room. Senator Locke, are you still here? Okay. Senator Locke has Senate Joint Resolution 272. And Senator Locke, this is a different approach than has been embraced by this committee in the past to the whole idea of vote restoration, and I want you to focus on that. We, in the past, the late Senator Yvonne Miller carried legislation that was typically amended before it got out of here, and this is just a different approach.
It is indeed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "The denial of this sacred right, that is the right to vote, is a tragic betrayal of the highest mandates of our democratic tradition. Give us the ballot and we will no longer have to worry the government about our basic rights." Automatic restoration of rights is not racial justice. Restoration does not repeal the language or address the racist intent of the felony disenfranchisement provision currently enshrined in the Virginia Constitution. Taking away a person's right to vote who has been convicted of a felony has never been about punishing people who committed a crime. It was and remains an overt and intended effort to block Black people from voting. If that is in doubt, just read the debates at the 1902 Constitutional Convention. The delegates' avowed goal was to purify the ballot, and felony disenfranchisement has proven to be their most impactful method. When felony disenfranchisement was incorporated in the post-Reconstruction 1902 Constitution, alongside poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses, it was just one tool designed to stop as many Black people from voting as possible. Black codes ensured that a disproportionate number of Black people would be criminalized and felonized. It is beyond dispute that felony disenfranchisement was and is as Jim Crow as poll taxes. Automatic restoration does not fix this. Let me repeat, automatic restoration does not fix this. Virginia was forced by the Federal Constitution and Voting Rights Act to repeal poll taxes and literacy tests. But felony disenfranchisement remains in the Virginia Constitution, and we have convinced ourselves that this is normal and somehow not racially defined. We are wrong on both counts. The question we should be asking ourselves is, why are we talking about giving something back to people that should have never been taken away in the first place? The right to vote is the essential currency of democracy. Withholding it from hundreds of thousands of Black Virginians, whether they are still incarcerated or not, makes a mockery of any pretense that we are a commonwealth seeking the right to right past wrongs and make reparations for past injustices. We should take action to offer all Virginians a constitutionally guaranteed right to vote for two reasons. First, we must assure racial justice at the ballot box by erasing the intentionally discriminatory Jim Crow felony disenfranchisement provision from the Virginia Constitution. And two, we must put in place a constitutional barricade against the possibility Virginia could fall back to 49th in the nation in ease of voting if a future legislature again seeks to limit ballot access by reimposing voter photo ID, excuse-based absentee voting, enhanced witness provisions for absentee ballots, and repeal of same-day registration to go into effect in 2022. Restoration, while certainly laudable, achieves neither goal. Mr. Chairman, the right to vote is sacred. Let's move forward with treating it as such, as a right for all, not a right for some and privilege for others. Supporting restoration of rights legislation will make folks feel good, patting ourselves on the back and saying, see, we did something. But in actuality, what's being said to those to whom rights are being restored is you're good. And if you're good and you beg us, we'll give you your rights back. Is that really the place where we want to be? I think we're better than this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I ask your support for Senate Joint Resolution 272.
Are there questions for Senator Locke? If not, I see a whole lot of people in the public that want to speak to this. Let's do 5 minutes total for public comment. We've still got a bunch to go this morning.
Would those who would like to speak in favor of the bill please raise their hand in Zoom? Sheba Williams, please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and Senators. My name is Sheba Williams, speaking in support of SB 272. I should have never lost my right to vote. The right to vote is used in a punitive manner to control individuals and essentially treats our fundamental right as a privilege. The history of felony disenfranchise is rooted in racism that started long before the well-documented 1902 convention, where Carter Glass said no one who is convicted of a felony can make sound moral decisions. Our state has staunchly opposed poll taxes, literacy tests, Black codes, Jim Crowism, and other voter suppression tactics to include lynching and murder. But I'm afraid our state continues to allow felony disenfranchisement to remain enshrined in our Constitution. I was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to 5 years probation, but I was not permitted to access my vote for 9 years. My husband lost his right indefinitely. I've paid taxes since I was 14. I've been counted in our census, but I had no say-so in who represents my family on school boards, city council, and general assembly, nor who my president would be. I have a voice that was muted due to felony disenfranchisement being used as a pawn. It was never about public safety. No more. I will never be silenced again. please vote for SB 272. Send a message that Virginia is ready to atone for its ugly racist history and acknowledge that we have been deprived for our fundamental right for far too long.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Williams.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't limit the amount, you could have two people take up the whole time. That was almost 2 minutes right there. If you don't limit the time they can speak.
Okay, no more than 30 seconds a person, okay? Just tell us who you are, whether you're for or against the bill, and if you represent a group, identify the group.
Denise Harrington, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, distinguished leaders. My name is Velma Denise Ricks Harrington, and I'm speaking for the League of Women Voters. You've already heard mention of Jim Crow and the 1902 convention, but I just want to read you some language from there from Delegate Gordon that said, ridding Virginia of the terrible evil of Negro suffrage. This clause was included in reference to incarcerated Virginians. However, Jim Crow is the gift that keeps on giving. As of 2016, more than 1 in 5 Black adults are disenfranchised in Virginia, and yet still we have about minimum of 200,000 Virginians that are still disenfranchised. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I urge this committee to do the right thing and end the strange career of Jim Crow.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Who's next?
Krista Rosa, please unmute and go ahead. Krista Rosa.
Yes, hi. I'm Krista Rose. I'm the leader of the Arlington Falls Church chapter of Spread the Vote, a 501c3 organization. On behalf of my volunteers and the dozens of returning citizens whom we have helped, I ask you to support SJ 272. Voting is a fundamental right protected by the U.S. Constitution. We don't take away a person's freedom of speech or religion or the right to an attorney. Why do we take away their voting rights? Let's join Maine, Vermont, DC, and Puerto Rico and allow all citizens of voting age to participate in our democracy. 100% right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, next.
Jess Unger, please go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jess Unger. I'm a staff attorney with Advancement Project. We support this bill. It removes a racist stain from the Virginia Constitution. We carry out the drafters' racist intent from the 1901-1902 Constitutional Convention. They adopted literacy tests, poll taxes, and this provision of the Virginia Constitution to strip the right to vote from people convicted of any felony. Let's turn that around. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Richard Walker, please unmute and go ahead.
Richard Walker, CEO, Bridging the Gap in Virginia. This racist legislation has been in existence for over 100 years, plus the other racist legislation that's in the Commonwealth of Virginia must stop, should stop, needs to stop, and we need to move forward to be an equitable, equal rights Commonwealth of Virginia. It's high time to get rid of the stagnant racism that has permeated this state for too long, far too long. It's time to get rid of the racism in Virginia.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Corey Chandler, please unmute and go ahead.
My name is Corey Chandler. I'm a lifelong resident of the Shenandoah Valley in the Senate's Senate's 26th district of the Commonwealth. I have been unable to vote for the past 6 years, and I support this bill. I am a tax-paying citizen. I've been counted in the census. I'm a master's student. There's absolutely no reason why I should not be able to participate in my democracy. I emailed each of the committee members Tuesday evening, and I urge each of you to read the email, to take it to heart, and vote for what's best for Virginians and democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Christopher Rashad Green, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christopher Rashad Green. I'm an organizer with New Virginia Majority and a formerly incarcerated individual. And it's time that in Virginia, we have to change Virginia's constitution to establish a guarantee of the right to vote to everybody. We have to repeal this current Jim Crow racist ban on voting for people convicted of felonies so that we have the right to choose our leaders and participate in our democracy. Voting is the core of being an American and at the core of creating a just and democratic society. So we at New Virginia Majority, and we do support SJ 272.
Okay, thank you. And from this point forward, you know, we really do have a limited amount of time, and I would appreciate it unless you have something new to say. Just identify yourself. If you're with a group, identify the group, identify your position, and then let's get to the next one.
Arthuretta Holmes Martin, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the resolutions addressing systemic and structural racism organization. The one thing I want to add, in addition to everyone else's comments, was that this amendment to the Virginia Constitution was the result of the 13th and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and it was a Mr. Glass who specifically said that he was doing this to ensure that the darkies could not vote in any election legally. And it is time for the state of Virginia to remove every stench of what occurred in that 1902 convention and restore citizenship, which is more than just the right to vote. Let us be clear. They removed citizenship.
Yes.
I thank you for making this change.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next.
Doris Cruz Mays, please unmute and go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Doris Krause Mays with the Virginia AFL-CIO, and we support this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Sean Winetta, please unmute, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate you letting me speak. Sean Winetta with the Humanization Project. I am unable to vote right now. I'm more politically engaged and more civically active than most voters, I would actually argue, and I don't have the opportunity to cast my ballot. I'd appreciate if you support this legislation and allow me the opportunity, as well as many, many others, to vote in this next election. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next.
Jenny Glass, please unmute and go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. My name is Jenny Glass. I speak on behalf of the ACLU of Virginia, and we're here to urge you to be bold and vote yes on SJ 272. I won't repeat what others have said, but I will add that for those who believe that restoration is the best that we can do, I challenge you to be as bold as your constituents. 66% of Virginia voters want to see this amendment passed, and a strong majority of Democrats all want a constitutionally guaranteed right to vote. The biggest challenge for this amendment is not going to be the voters. It is the belief by some in this assembly that it is going to be still okay to treat some people convicted of felonies as second-class citizens. Set an example for the South. Be the first to let everyone vote. I urge you to support SJ 272.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Gayleen Knoyton, please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Gayleen Knoyton. I'm with the Virginia Congress of the NAACP, and for over 100 years, voting rights has been the bedrock for the NAACP. We strongly support this bill. We will release a first-time ever civil rights report card that will go to all our members throughout the Commonwealth. I urge you to please support this bill.
Okay, our next speaker.
Joel Bloom, please go ahead.
Yes, I'm Joel Blum. I'm a private citizen. Thank you for allowing me to talk. The one thing I would ask is a question. I'm in favor of this bill. What does it do to restrict the right to vote? How does it help our society to limit the right to vote of some of our citizens? It doesn't make any sense to me, so I'm strongly in favor of extending the right to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Blum. Is there another speaker?
There's one more. Stephen Spitz, please unmute and go ahead.
Mr. Spitz.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to speak in favor of this amendment on behalf of Progressive Democrats of America in Virginia, in honor of what Senator Locke said, in the memory of John R. Lewis, who had his skull cracked trying to get the right to vote, in honor of people who lost their lives like Goodman, Cheney, Schwerner, Violet Liuzzo. Let's do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spitz. If that's the end of our public comment, we'll hear from members of the committee. Were there questions for the patron? Is there a motion?
Move the report, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor will vote yes on the electronic voting machine.
Ayes 10, noes 4. Senator McDougall, how? Nay. I will so record.
Okay, the resolution passes. Thank you, Senator. Are there others who are not members of the committee? Senator McPike is waiting. Senator McPike, why don't you tell us your resolution number or your 290. This has to do with pay for members of the General Assembly, so please give your attention to Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Joint Resolution 290 seeks to change the Virginia Constitution to put the framework of legislative compensation to an independent commission created under the statute. As you know, the last time pay was really changed was 1986, 1987. So 34 years ago, the same compensation structure exists essentially today, although certainly the Appropriations Acts have sort of nibbled at the edges in terms of office expense and other allowances. I think what this sets out to do is to create a couple things. One of which is the establishment of the Compensation Commission, ensuring that no members of the General Assembly are members of that commission. Additionally, it sets out the review of both regular salary every 4 years, the additional salary for attending meetings, expense allowance, retirement benefits, as well as if there's needed compensation based on the person's role, whether it be, for instance, chair of finance or appropriations or some other role that consumes a considerable amount of time. They're allowed to take a look at that. Furthermore, it sets out within this amendment a framework for public comment and transparency associated with the pay. And so these are some of the core issues as laid out in the amendment. The last time in my research that something like this was addressed was after Belial's. In fact, I think Bob Calhoun and Vince Callahan introduced legislation in 1992 that was on the legislative side but not the amendment side. So this really looks at the limits of doing at the legislative changing law side is obviously it's still subject to the Appropriations Act. And that's sort of the problem is having sort of self-interested parties vote on your own pay. This removes that. In fact, it says that the pay shall be reported to the General Assembly and shall become a part of the Appropriations Act. And so this is a part of a transparent process. It removes our conflict of sort of giving self-pay raises or pay raises that are sort of in office expenses or other sort of allowances. So it does provide increased transparency, Mr. Chairman, and hope that the committee supports the effort.
Okay, this is a constitutional amendment. Are there questions for the patron?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Peake.
Thank you. What if the public cuts our pay? And then we go, well, we're already below the minimum wage. And then if we raise the minimum wage and we go way below the minimum wage, what will we do at that point?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, maybe the senator could restate the question.
Senator Peake, would you like to, is that a serious question?
Not really.
Okay.
It would be nice if we could get our pay up to the minimum wage standard, whether it's the current $7.50 or the whatever the new minimum wage takes effect.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, we've got a question from Senator McClellan.
It's actually a response to Senator Peake's question. Salaried employees are not subject to the minimum wage. It's wage employees, so we're salaried employees. We wouldn't be subject to minimum wage anyway.
Okay, Senator McPike has put forward a serious effort to reassess the way we do this. Are there any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
There may be a speaker or two.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's hear if there are members of the public waiting to comment.
Mr. Chair, at this time, there are no hands raised to speak. Oh,
Move
as I
report.
say that, someone turned
Move
up. We
report.
have one person to speak.
We do have one speaker. Let's hear the speaker if we can hold that motion for just a second.
Narisa Turner, whenever you're ready, please unmute and go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Narisa Turner on behalf of the Virginia Conservation Network. And as part of our bucket of work committed to fair and equitable government, we are in support of this Senate Joint Resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, just wanted to briefly say I commend the patron for this legislation. I mean, frankly, you know, I feel blessed to be able to be in a financial position to come and serve, but let's be honest, many people can't. And I think this is a huge barrier that frankly dates back to the days of plantation owners, and it's something that we need to address. And there's many younger people with children who need daycare, things that I no longer have in my family. But these are big challenges, and on $18,000 a year, particularly if you look at the last 4 or 5 years and all the days for special sessions, this needs to be addressed. I know it's politically unpopular for anybody serving to do it, but it needs to be done. So with that, I move to report.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Second. The motion has been made and seconded. Unless there's further discussion, the committee will vote on SJR 290. Okay, congratulations, Senator. Your motion passes with a few abstentions.
10-0-5.
Okay. Now, are there committee members waiting to have their legislation heard besides me? Yes, we've got Senator Reeves. Senator, you want to state your resolution number and we'll hear it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill we've heard before, and I know the senior senator from Fairfax doesn't really like this bill, but we've condemned one of our own the other day on the floor for her actions. Not what she said, but her actions. And I think those actions have consequences. This is a bill to fix that legislative immunity that we all have that privilege of doing. And I think if we're going to live under the laws that we make, I don't think that we should have special privileges. I think the days of I guess there were days where sheriffs would stop members and keep them from critical votes, probably predate the use of iPhones and body cameras and all those sort of things, and at the speed of that social media goes, I don't think those kind of antics would make it very far before they were called out. So I think this is a bill whose time has come, that we need to be honest with the citizens we represent and know that we are not above the law, and that's why I carried the bill. I'm not carrying it for a political reason or anything else. I just think we can't continue to hold others accountable when we don't hold ourselves accountable, and that's the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, do you have an amendment to that? I see there's a line amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is.
Okay,
Let's see if I can pull it up, though.
Is there a motion to report the line amendment?
So moved.
Okay, and do you want to explain how the line amendment changes the...
I can't get it up, so hold on.
It says on line 20, after the word judge, it strikes with authorization and just says upon the request. I don't know if there's a significant impact to that.
Let me see if I can get this. Mr. Chairman, can you repeat it? Or if Brooks can just go through it again?
Maybe Brooks would be better to explain the line amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The introduced version says that the arrest can happen with the authorization of the local Commonwealth's attorney, and the amendment would say upon the request of the Commonwealth's attorney, so that the Commonwealth's attorney isn't the one who's authorizing the request. It's still the judge authorizing the request, or authorizing the arrest, not the Commonwealth's attorney. They're just asking for it.
Mr. Chairman, so are there attorneys in here still? Oh, okay. We got two of our own that are attorneys. I think what this does is takes one level away from the ability, since Commonwealth attorneys are elected officials, it actually ratchets it up to the courts, and we put a lot of authority into our judges, and that would make it even one more level of protection to make sure that there aren't political antics going on with the bill or with the charge.
And Senator Reeves, I apologize. I had to be across the way to present a bill. What provoked you to introduce this legislation?
Mr. Chairman, I brought this back last year or the year before. It was the wrong timing of it. But I just was starting to look at stuff and understanding that I had no idea that we even had special privilege or anything like that, found out about it, and I thought, well, gosh, if we're passing bills and laws that are holding everybody accountable, but we get some kind of immunity while we're in session, I just didn't think that was right, Mr. Chairman, and I brought the bill, and unfortunately, one of our colleagues in the House got themselves in trouble, and then it became political, and I brought it again this year because it's the correct timing of the bill, and I just think that if we're going to continue to do those, hold other people accountable, we've got to hold ourselves, and that's all I'm doing. This is not a political statement. I'm not anything like that. I just think with the onslaught of social media that if people are going to try to do that to stop members from getting votes and some of those things, it just needs to.
Mr. Chairman?
go.
Senator Sproul, hold on. I've got Senator Peake and Senator Bell in the queue. Are okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just speak. I would say I hadn't been in that long, the session. I guess I came in January of 2017, so I wasn't aware that we had immunity. And then, of course, obviously the issue with the delegate brought it to the forefront, and we found out we did have immunity. But in reality, the immunity would not have foreclosed that prosecution. I think the officer and Commonwealth's attorney misunderstood the immunity. We just cannot be arrested on our way to or from. And I think we just need to go ahead and do away with the immunity so there will be no question that if an officer finds us doing something illegal during session, we need to be charged.
Senator Sproul.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at that, then let's look at the other special privileges that we have. For example, lawyers who has a case in court, and because he's a delegate or senator, they can postpone it. So they have. So I'm a vote against this because I'm concerned. I want to look at all of them. So you're giving certain people special privileges, some not. This is one, I agree, but I want to look at the one also that you give other people because of their position. With the courts, they have position that they don't have to show up today because I paid a judge, a lawyer's X amount of money to hear my case. But yet, because he can go to court because he's the member of the General Assembly, he can postpone it, keep postponing it because of that. So if you can look at this, look at the whole thing, not just pick out one because a member got in trouble. Look at all the privileges that we have. So I'm going to vote against this because I want to look at everything that we have to give us members. I want to make sure that some people don't get special privileges that I don't have because I'm not a lawyer, for one.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reeves.
In response to my colleague and good friend on Senator Sproul, I don't know if the privilege to allow y'all as attorneys is in the Constitution or not. I did not research that. I don't know if that's a separate bill in the code section. I think, Mr. Chair, you probably could answer that, or the attorneys in here can answer that. I know there's a code, but I don't know if it's in the Constitution.
It's a section of the code I know very well, Senator Reeves, and praise the Lord for that section. Are there additional questions for the patron?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Donovan. Thank you. Just to clarify, so what I'm hearing is that the objections that we heard from Senator Sproul about not looking at all things at once are not relevant because this is the only section in the Constitution that we can change. So for the purposes of this bill, this amendment, this is the only thing we can change because it's constitutional. The others would have to be taken up in a different bill. So just to clarify that.
It's the only thing we can change in this bill.
Correct.
We can change the code section. Somebody could repeal 30-5. I'd vote against that too. But that's certainly something this General Assembly could do in another bill.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you. I have a question just to make sure that I understand. So this would allow if we were in session and something happened in somebody's community, this would allow that member to be arrested, or they would still continue their service, but it wouldn't stop the charge? Can you just give me some clarity?
Brooks, do you want to, you're the lawyer for this committee, do you want to explain exactly what this does and what its impact would be?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I understand it, this would allow, upon request of the Commonwealth's attorney in the locality, allow a judge to issue process for the arrest of a member during session. So whether they're in session or out of session, they could be arrested.
Mr. Chair, just follow-up question?
Senator Boysko.
So that would prevent the member from being able to execute their duties as a legislator during that time because they would be arrested? And unable to come and vote and deliberate?
Theoretically, that's correct. I guess they could, if there was if they were arrested, they'd be subject to bail, and they could maybe they could make bail. Maybe somebody would put up a couple of bucks to get them out. Maybe not. Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to respond to the actual language of the bill and to be clear, I will point out we have had a member of the General Assembly, a member I'm actually quite fond of, that was actually imprisoned and still was able to be at all of these sessions appropriately. And so this still gives our judges discretion. And the amendment basically says the judge has the power to make a decision on this. But we are talking about striking lines that would hold a member of the legislature not responsible if they were the cases we're striking are treason, felony, and breach of the peace. Kind of think people should be held accountable for that, no matter what position they hold. And the judge has full discretion. We are moving in the legislature to give our trusted judges discretion. They have the discretion, but the idea that we would exclude ourselves from being responsible for treason, felony, or breach of the peace is something I think is past its time, and we should strike it.
As I read this, as I read the language, right now judges have the authority to issue you're subject, as a member of the General Assembly, you're subject to be in judicial process in cases of treason, felony, or breach of peace. We're striking that, and we're saying everything else.
You're right. I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. I'm just trying to make sure.
In any case, I think that the law is the law.
Okay, Senator Bell and then Senator Sproul.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell's first, then Senator Sproul.
If we can do that, then let's look at why a person who is president can do things. You can't do anything while he's president. Look at why members of the U.S. Senator, members who are congressmen. So let's look at, we have had members who participate on the House and the Senate, who will participate, who were warrants were taken out for them, one in Portsmouth, and one in Richmond, and other areas. And so now if that's the case, then if they can afford to post bond, then fine, whatever it became. Then, but the biggest, what I'm scared of, is at the discretion of a judge. The judge in Richmond might have a good discretion, and one in North Virginia might have a different discretion, and one in Chesapeake might have a different discretion. So if you can do that, then let's look at the top line, all the way from the top on down. So if a person who is a U.S. congressman or U.S. senator or president, do they have any more rights than we because we're a senator?
So I think your point is that right now we have a bright line, and if we open it up to judicial discretion, we could have one rule here, one rule somewhere else, one rule somewhere else.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I want to revisit to make sure I understand one of the previous questions. As far as court cases are being subject to court, if I'm understanding that correct, that's a code section issue. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
As I understand it, it is.
Okay,
yes.
So that wouldn't change by this. That would have to be a separate action. What this would just change is by going to a judge, you would take away, with the judge's involvement, you would take away immunity from a legislator, and versus what the law says now is it would only be lost on the cases of those very serious ones. Is that correct?
Well, the way I read this, I mean, and Brooks chime in, but I think you're subject to arrest for any offense if a judge with authorization of the attorney for the Commonwealth or the law enforcement agency having jurisdiction issues the process. You're subject to any process. And the way I read this, it's just you're just talking about criminal or not necessarily civil offense, but I don't really. You're not talking about civil process with this, are you, Brooks?
It's not specified in the bill.
So it could be civil process.
Presumably, anything a judge could issue a request for an arrest for could be issued.
Okay, so if you're found in contempt of court or something. Okay. Does that answer your question, Senator Bell?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Donovan's next, and then Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on this and be clear, First of all, we have to control what we have control over, and we do not have control over the federally made decisions. Two wrongs do not make a right. Just because it's wrong at the federal level doesn't mean it's wrong that it's, right at the state level. We are about to entertain a conversation about mandated benefit, listen to me, I'm in healthcare already, about mandatory minimums. And we're going to have that conversation based on the precedent that we trust our judges. But when it comes to us, we don't trust our judges to make a good decision. This is irony at the very least, and I don't think anybody's above the law. I think we've had enough happen in the last few years for us to say that in our Constitution, and that we need to make this change. It's almost like FOIA. Why is there not transparency and accountability for us? If we break the law, we break the law. And I don't think privilege should be awarded to anybody. Everybody should be held accountable to the law. I hope you'll support this.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the way I read the law today is that there's no constitutional restrictions on arrest for felonies and breach of the peace, whatever breach of the peace means. That could be a lot of different misdemeanors. What this really has to do is with misdemeanors. And misdemeanors can be sworn out by a citizen with zero law enforcement involvement. I could go down to the magistrate right now and say, Cree Deeds punched me last night, and they would issue a warrant. Now, under this constitutional provision, a judge would have to, approve the process to result in the actual arrest. But my point is that there's lots of different ways that misdemeanor charges can originate, and there can be all kinds of mischief behind that. I would also just note that, in my experience, whenever a case involves a member of the legislature in the locality where they serve or represent part of the people, they'll often bring in a substitute judge from outside of that jurisdiction to make the decision, and they're often retired judges who knows where they're from or what their thoughts are. And it seems to me that the existing language limiting it to felonies is fine, and misdemeanors can wait till we're out of session. I mean, I'm just not really clear why this is a problem that we need to solve. It doesn't seem to me like there is a problem here. So I mean, I just see a lot of opportunities for mischief between how political, Commonwealth attorneys can be from time to time. I know obviously there's a judge involved in this, but it gives me a lot of concern.
Are there members of the public that want to speak to this bill?
At this time, there are no. Never mind, Corey Chandler, when you get into the room, please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you. I originally wasn't going to speak, so that's my hand was raised late. But I just wanted to say that I think it's interesting. We just voted on voting rights for disenfranchised convicted felons, and now we're discussing whether or not our elected officials should be held accountable to the same laws that the felons were convicted under. So I just think it's an interesting comparison.
I appreciate that. Yes, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want some clarification again, because I'm not as familiar with this part of the Constitution. Are we saying that currently, if one of us commits a felony, we would be able to be prosecuted and action could be taken immediately?
Under the plain language
That's existing
of
law.
the existing law, if you're charged with a felony, you can be arrested and.
Okay.
Yes.
So we would be held accountable if we were to do something that would be at the felony level. This bill would just add on a misdemeanor, which could be like a driving infraction or some other less serious.
Well, as Senator Surville points out, breach of the peace could involve misdemeanors. So any misdemeanor that doesn't involve breach of peace, or any offense that doesn't involve breach of peace, going down to a traffic offense, yes, that could involve that. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I'm still not sure what the difference between the legislation that we're looking at versus what the current process is. If somebody could clarify that, I'm sorry. It's
So the current process involves felonies and misdemeanors that are classified as a breach of peace. And as Senator Servell pointed out, a breach of the peace could involve any number of I guess, misdemeanors. I guess theoretically, if you are drunk in public, you are breach, and you are making a lot of noise at an outdoor event, you are breaching the peace. If you hit somebody, you are breaching the peace. If you, I guess, create a disturbance in a movie theater, you could potentially be breaching the peace. So that's probably about as clear as you're going to get, Senator Boysko.
Let's try more the PBI to be
Senator Donovan's has something to say first.
How many times she can speak?
Well, we don't have.
Don't you love me speaking, Senator Sproul? I'm just going to say what we're saying here is that our legal system is good enough for all of our constituents, but it's not good enough for us. And we have to have exceptions. I think if you're breaking the law, and so so let's accept that if there's no misbehavior, I can't remember exactly how Senator Servell said it, but there's no mischief. If there's no mischief, then the system is good enough for us. Well, what about the mischief for everybody else? If there's mischief, we need to fix it. If we have Commonwealth attorneys that are misbehaving and using political mischief in their execution of their roles, then they need to go, and we need to be aware. But what we're really saying here is that our legal system is good enough for everybody else, but we have to have protections from it.
Mr. Chairman.
That's been part of the law for a long, long time.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Servell.
We're not saying that at all. What we're saying is that during the legislative session, there's the potential for some people to abuse the process to achieve press and political objectives to try and leverage us while we're trying to serve. Just to give you an example, I could get a phone call from somebody, say I get a phone call from somebody in Tazewell, just to give an example, just because Tazewell's far away, and they don't like the way I talk to them. They go down to their magistrate and they say, Senator Servell threatened me on the telephone. Next thing I know, there's a misdemeanor warrant issued for phone threats, Class 1 misdemeanor phone threats warrant issued against me, and now I got to go down to Tazewell. They issue a warrant. They call up the Richmond Police Department, ask to arrest me, have me transferred to to Tazewell, to have bond posted or some crap. I mean, that's the kind of stuff this is designed to prevent against, not holding us unaccountable. The way that it works right now, we are plenty accountable, just not during session.
Senator Sproul had a motion.
To PBI.
Is there a second? Are there further motions or further comment? If not, please open the roll.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay.
I voted wrong. I meant to vote.
Change Senator Vogel's vote so it's 9-6.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Vogel intended to vote. She intended to vote no. Or yes. So the bill's PBI. Thank you, Senator Reeves. Now, I lost my place because I had to be across the hall presenting the bill. Have you done Senator Mason or Senator McPike?
Senator McPike's legislation passed. Is Senator Mason, did we take anything from him? I don't think we did.
No.
Okay, well, Senator Eben, you've got two bills.
So the first one is now online, sir, the substitute for SJ 270.
Okay, and I think that substitute's already been adopted.
Yes. So this is the replacement of the statutory ban on same-gender marriage with an affirmative right to marry in the Constitution, regardless of gender of the parties to the marriage. It further specifies that religious organizations and clergy acting in their religious capacity shall have the right to refuse to perform any marriage. We know same-gender marriage has been legal in Virginia since October 6, 2014. The sky has not fallen, and this would remove a stain on the Constitution, in my opinion. And with that, I would, I don't know if there's comments from the public or anything.
Does anybody in the committee have any questions for Senator Eben?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I just want to thank him for carrying this bill.
Okay. Does anyone on the committee have any comments or anything for
I
Senator
have a
Evans?
question.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I unequivocally supported the bill before the amendment. I want to understand the amendment. Does this amendment remove the rights of a religious person to decline to marry somebody if they have religious exemption without me endorsing their beliefs either way, but respecting individuals' religious values?
No, this affirms it. It says, in part, religious organizations and clergy in their religious capacity shall have the right to refuse to perform any marriage. So while it guarantees the rights of parties to get married, it says that churches do not have to, can have their own standards.
Mr.
That's on the
President,
second page of the subject.
I failed to scroll down. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
It's difficult to scroll down with the way the substitutes now appear online. I found anyway. I'm glad to find that I'm not the only one that's culture that's technically illiterate.
That's why I use paper.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah. Okay. Are there other questions for Senator Evans? If
Mr.
not,
Chairman.
Senator Surville.
I'm sorry. You know, I mean, I remember when this went through and it gave me a headache because the Virginia Declaration of Rights, you know, has only been amended like I think once or twice or something in history, and I didn't like it when we did it back in 2006. Have any other states chiseled this type of fundamental right
Yes.
into their constitution?
Yeah, the state of Nevada is the first.
So we'd be number two?
Yeah, unless anyone, well, this is the beginning of a 2-year process, but yes, as it stands now, would be number 2.
Mr. Chairman, for the question.
Senator Surville.
How does this language compare to what they have in Nevada? I mean, taking it out just removes the government prohibition, but actually putting an affirmative right in the Constitution.
That's what they did in Nevada. We looked at this, and I consulted with some attorneys and brought it to Meg, and it's kind of a combination, but it's very similar.
Okay, thanks.
Additional questions for Senator Eben? If not, let's hear from the public. And let's do 5 minutes total. There are a bunch of people I see on the line. Please respect the rights of other people to express opinions. So the longer you talk, the less time they will have to talk. Let's hold off and see how many people are going to. If anybody takes as much as a minute or longer than a minute, I'm going to have to impose limits on personal time. So the first speaker.
Would those who would speak in support of the bill please raise their hand in Zoom? Joan Port, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Joan Port, First Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League of Women Voters of Virginia supports repealing the constitutional provision defining marriage as only a union between one man and one woman, and we support all marriages being treated equally under the law regardless of the sex or gender of the parties to be married. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Zoe Aquino, please unmute and go ahead.
My name is Zoe Aquino, Community Health Manager at Noxic, Virginia, and I want to express support for SJR 270, both as an advocate, as a queer Asian American Virginian. Just really want to put out there that, this resolution will provide security to myself and other Virginians, particularly those like me who are planning to get married with partners who are transgender and have chronic health conditions. I would like to be the next of kin for my partner if possible and make sure that she is secure and set. And secure our future together. So please support the resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
V. Lemnick, please unmute and go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is V. Lamnick. I'm the Executive Director of Equality Virginia, and we are in support of SJ 270. We know that LGBT people want the same chance as everyone else to marry the person that they love and take care of their families. In 2015, the Supreme Court ruled that LGBT couples should have the same freedom to marry as other couples. Not only this, but last year, the General Assembly removed the ban on same-sex marriages and civil unions from Virginia's legal code. Despite all of these advancements, the current makeup of the Supreme Court has LGBT Virginians worried about the future of their marriage and that their marriage may be at risk. This should simply not be the case. The passage of SJ 270 would put us one step closer to ensuring that LGBT marriages will always be equally recognized in the Commonwealth. Marriage equality is the law of the land. It's reflected in the Virginia Code, and it's time for the Virginia Constitution to affirm that reality.
Okay, thank you very much. Who's next?
Bruce Ryder, please go ahead.
Yes, I am speaking as a citizen of Virginia for 47 years, the last 35 of which I've been in a committed relationship with my now husband. It is deeply offensive to me that 5 years after being moot, this is still on the books. And if folks are to get another bite at this apple of making me unequal, they need to go through an entire process of due process. They don't get to have me hand them the apple. So please get this off the books. It needed to have been done 5 years ago.
Okay, thank you very much. Who's next?
Carol Shaw, please unmute and go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Carol Shaw, and my wife, Mary Townley, and I were plaintiffs in the Bostic v. Rainey marriage equality case that was resolved by the Supreme Court in 2014. While we entered the legal fight for marriage equality in 2013, our personal fight for marriage equality began when our now 23-year-old daughter, Emily, was born. We decided that regardless of Virginia's lack of legal recognition at the time, we were her family and would always present ourselves as both her moms. Names matter. Names like mom and wife make all the difference in the world. That's what we won when we won our Supreme Court challenge, the right to call each other family and to be legally recognized as such in Virginia. I want to close today with a quote from the text of Judge Arenda Wright Allen's decision from the Eastern District Court of Appeals in Virginia. She wrote, "We have arrived upon another moment in history when we, the people, becomes more inclusive and our freedom more perfect. The men and women and the children too, whose voices join in noble harmony with plaintiffs today, ask for fairness and fairness only. This committee can make a bold statement for fairness in Virginia and remove the stain of prejudice by moving this important amendment to our Constitution forward." Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Who's next?
Josh Heltzer, please unmute and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Josh Hetzler, on behalf of the Family Foundation. The General Assembly and the people of Virginia rightly recognize marriage as being a union of a man and a woman when they memorialized its definition into our Constitution in 2006. They did so because they understood the value, significance, and myriad benefits of marriage for individuals, children, and for society, and they sought to protect it against growing attempts to redefine it out of existence. Unfortunately, the consequences of not having a strong, clear, timeless definition of marriage we sought to avoid with the amendment continue to come to fruition as a result of a Supreme Court opinion. In all the debates surrounding this issue in years past, people of faith were assured by same-sex marriage proponents that their marriages would not do nothing to impact the lives of those who maintain marriage as between one man and one woman, that nothing would impact the religious freedom of those who, in many different faiths, hold fast the timeless understanding of marriage. Unfortunately, as expected, all of society, including those whose deeply held convictions have not moved with secular society, are uniformly expected to not only abide those with differing views on marriage, but embrace them in their speech and celebrate them in their business life. And even religious entities are now being challenged to put children into homes that include a new definition of marriage that violates their faith, as the House just passed that bill yesterday. Even those who may not have a religious conviction about the definition of marriage, but simply trust the social science that overwhelmingly affirms the benefits of a mom and a dad for children, are expected to ignore the data and to get on board. Because Virginia is the birthplace of religious freedom, we urge you not to remove this definition from our Constitution, or worse, to redefine it entirely, as this bill attempts to do. Virginians are not asking for this amendment, and it would only cause unnecessary strife and division. But even if they were, the truth is that this legislative body lacks the authority to redefine an institution that is rooted in the very laws of nature and reflective of a design that is both self-evident and immutable. For these reasons, we ask that you reject this resolution.
Okay, thank you. How many more speakers are there?
Mr. Chair, there's one more speaker.
Okay, Mr. Iglesias, we're way over. I'll let the last speaker go over because he was the only one that was opposed, the only one in the public. And I would appreciate it if you would just identify who you are, what organization you represent, and whether you are for or against Senate Joint Resolution 270.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Iglesias with the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. On behalf of our 65 sexual and domestic violence agencies who serve LGBTQ survivors of violence, we wholeheartedly support this bill, and we thank the patron for carrying it.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got to run to a subcommittee meeting, so I'm going to hand off the chairmanship.
To who?
Mr. Chair, if I could make a motion.
Please.
I would move to report.
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
It's been properly moved and second that the bill be reported.
Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to comment, as I look at the amendments in the bill, I am 100% in support of aligning the Constitution of Virginia with the decision by the Supreme Court. I am extraordinarily grateful for the line 27 and 28 with the religious exemptions because I know that concerns people. But I need to understand the language and the fact that we'll only be the second state to make some of these assertive statements. It's the first time I am seeing this. And I'm going to abstain at this time so that I have time to consider this additional information because I'm just not quite sure what all the consequences are. Listen to the insights that we heard today, and I just need to understand that better.
Thank you so much. Any other comments from the members? Any other comments? If not, open the roll, please. All voted?
Ayes 9, noes 4, 2 abstentions.
Ayes 9, no 4, 2 abstentions. Thank you, Ms. Evans. You have another bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The other bill has to do with the term of office for the governor, of allowing the governor to have a second consecutive term. You've heard this before. It would not take effect till 2025 after we would have to readopt it next year and then the voters vote on it. We know that we're the only state in the country where you can't serve 2 consecutive terms. This bill does impose a 2-term limit with that. And just real briefly, we know the governor has proposed and signed biennial budgets, but if passed by the General Assembly, they have to live with the budget for 2 years that the predecessor has proposed. We know that for continuity, it takes the governor some time to appoint cabinet and agency heads. And for accountability, governors should remain accountable to the people. We should rehire governors who are doing a good job, who seek an extension and honor their promises, and dismiss those who don't after 4 years. There should be a public opportunity to require a chief executive to answer questions about their office's successes and failures and goals for the future, and that would be a re-election campaign. We know that Virginia government employs more people than many Fortune 500 companies, but we would never expect Microsoft or Disney to fire their CEO every 4 years without a performance evaluation. With that, I'm ready for any questions members may have.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Seville. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Thanks. Appreciate that blast in the past. Senator Ebenez, I also want to confirm something else about your amendment. The way it's worded right now, no person could be elected as governor 3 times, correct?
That's correct.
So if somebody, for example, already was governor, gets elected as governor this November, they couldn't serve and they couldn't run again in 2025, right?
It's only applicable to people elected to serve in 2025 and thereafter, that's correct.
Okay. Got it.
Other comments from members? But my question to you, Senator, Virginia, I believe the governor has more power than most governors because the way that he or she could appoint appointments across the state. And in the past, since I've been up here now almost 30 years, it has been complaints that they didn't have no problem, but would the governor give up some of his power and authority when other governors across the country don't have the same thing as Virginia? Is there anything in your bill that would say that, hey, well, now that if you go 2 terms, that you can give the legislature some of the authority to appoint some of these things, because we're the only state that I know of that the governor has more power than anybody because he has the authority for the whole state.
That is not specified in the bill, limiting the powers of the governor. However, if this were to go forward, I'd be open to discussing that further. But no, this bill does not limit the powers of the governor.
All right, thank you. Any other, before I open up for the public, comments from the public, please?
Mr. Chair, at this time, there are no hands raised to speak.
All right, before we call for a motion, any other members having any comments? If not, the floor is open for a motion.
Chairman, I move to report.
Second.
Been moved and second to report the bill. All in favor, use the sign of saying aye.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Thank you. Bill was approved, 11-4. Thank you so much. Any other bills?
I think we're waiting for Senator Mason. Is Senator Mason available?
Someone has gone to ask him to come in.
Okay.
Get him to come in.
That's up to you.
Senator Mason, thank you. What's your bill number? Or
289, Mr. Chairman.
okay.
Beg your pardon,
So
Mr. Chairman.
this is SJR 289.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you explain it to us?
So, Mr. Chairman, the genesis of this seems to be hundreds of years ago when Senator Sproul controlled the entire government, and I wanted a piece of property. I'd come to Senator Sproul and say, how about help me out with that nice corner piece of property? And so we put limits on how long the government could grant a piece of property. 40 years for land, 60 years for air rights. Flash forward to modern day, Hampton Roads Sanitation District comes and wants a permanent easement and wants a permanent deed, and says, hey, I'm going to get a bond deal. I need full control of this property in perpetuity. We can't, the city cannot grant it to them. Also, states' environmental and conservation easements or historic easements. We had a situation in Newport News, Mr. Chairman, that we have redeveloped Lee Hall train station, and we wanted a historic easement. The state requested a permanent easement. And so we wrote a letter back to them and said, can you show me where we can grant you one? We want to grant you one, but the Constitution says that we can only do it for 40 years. Now, back to HRSD, they can then come with court proceedings to condemn the land, which is more money, more time, more court case, that if we could just grant to another public body, not to Monty, not to a private entity, but to another public body, a permanent and full-time easement, then the problem would be solved. Unfortunately, the Constitution says we can't. So this, Mr. Chairman, this will be a real snoozer for the voters, but this is one that we feel like we need a solution to, and so that's the crux of the bill.
Before we open up to further questions, I want to ask one, which is there a workaround? What happens now in this situation?
Now I've heard tell of even writing at the beginning of a deed, although we question whether we can do this constitutionally or not, we grant you a permanent easement, or they give 40-year or the condemnation process. No, sir, there is no workaround because it's in the Constitution. And like I said, trying to explain this to the voter is, going to be a real snoozer, but we need to fix it in order to do these modern-day, long-term public-to-public deals.
Okay. Are there members of the committee with questions for the patron? Senator Peake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Mason. I guess I've heard some concern about the no bid and no advertised part of the bill, but I take it that has to be done because you're giving the easement to somebody, and if somebody comes in and bids on it, then it blows up the deal. Is that why you have that requirement?
Yes, sir, and I agree. That language was, it makes you look, but yes, sir, HRSD is putting their line here. That's where we want to grant the easement. That's where it works the best, and you don't particularly want to have a public bid.
So you don't want somebody else to come in and hijack it, and screw up their deal. Mr. Chairman, excuse me.
And remember, this is a public body to a public body.
A public to public.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So I think that's the key to that
Thanks,
question. But that's a great point.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, Senator Peake.
Okay. Were there any further questions for the patron? Are there members of the public who are here to comment on SJ 289? Raise your hand in the Zoom room if there are.
Well, Kylie Owens, who is the city attorney for the City of Newport News, is here to answer any questions if you may have them, but I'm not sure
Is there anything Mr. Owens or Ms. Mr. or Ms. Owens would like to add?
Mr.
Move to report.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to report the constitutional amendment, SJ 289.
Mr. Chair, I hate to interrupt, but there is someone in front of the public who would like to speak.
Let's suspend that for just a moment while we'll take public comment.
Jerry Wilson, please go ahead.
Hi, I represent the City of Newport News. We're just here to support the bill and thank the patron. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then we'll revert to our motion to report, which was seconded. I believe I heard a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. So all in favor of SJ 289 will signify so on the electronic voting machine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And Senator Vogel, Senator Reeves, Senator Vogel. Ayes 10, no 0, 5 abstentions.
Okay, the motion carries. And Mr. Clerk, I believe that was our last bill. That's as far as I see, that completes our agenda. Was there anything else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
that's good.
Okay, with that, the committee will rise.